Hey everybody, we're live. It's another one. Thanks for checking out another Saturday night live coding stream. In the notes here I put Saturday night live coding stream, but I read it like Saturday Night Live and it didn't sound right. This is week 28 of my OS in the browser side project. It's a live session, kind of just coding away on the same repository. These videos are the only time where I do any commits to the repository, so every commit for this thing has been in these streams, and I guess this would be the 28th one. If you want to throw any messages my way in the chat, feel free, and I'll respond, or any comments after the fact. If you like this video, please throw me a like, and if you like what I'm doing, you support me, you want to motivate me, you want to follow what's going on, you want to catch my next video, which is every Saturday at least, if not others in between, but Saturdays at this time is when I do them. Please subscribe. That'll get you to me the soonest. And yeah, that's about it for introductions. One thing I wanted to say for today that'll be a cool little treat for us to try out together is I've recently installed this tool called Github Copilot. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's a neat little AI thing kind of powered by this GPT-3 algorithm. You see here where it's kind of this person's writing stuff here, and then the Copilot thing suggests a bunch of stuff. I haven't tried it too much for coding. I tried it a tiny bit, including just when I was writing the show notes today, and it was actually trying to fill in parts of the show notes for me. So it might be fun to watch it at work here and see how it goes. So yeah, it'll be something fun to try because I signed up for the beta and I recently got on. I don't think in the agreements it said I could do this. I don't see why not, right? So hopefully it all goes okay. Yeah, seems reasonable. So this will be a live stream with the Copilot, or as they call it, pair programming with it. And you can see it right here. You can watch. Let me try here. Hi. Okay, it just says some random crap. Let's see. Copilot is a tool to help you find and connect with your GitHub followers. I don't think that's correct, but anyways, it auto-completed, and you can see it just give all sorts of suggestions, and you can press Alt bracket and get different suggestions. So it's not doing many here, but obviously this is just notes, and I don't even know where it's pulling some of this stuff from, possibly the previous notes. So we'll see with code is really where it's supposed to be relevant. So we'll see how it goes with code. So as far as show notes for the last couple episodes, what I've been doing is basically just kind of going over my commits that I do throughout the week preparing for the stream. So I wrote most of these in some logical manner. I've been trying to be better with my commits. So hopefully we can kind of just go over these, because before this, for a while I was improvising, and then for a while I was going off these branches, but I was using the files changed. So I was like looking through this massive bulk of file and trying to figure out like, what did I do? And you know what? It's just too much. So we're going to go through the journey together of my week of writing additions to the project, and you guys will see them as we go, and maybe we'll refactor them, maybe we'll jump ahead, we'll jump back, who knows, but we'll have fun doing it, right? And most of these things that I did were done before I had Copilot, so we'll see if it gives any interesting suggestions along the way too. That'll be fun. Other than that, I think we can just dive right in and start some coding. So let's see, what did I do first? Add next image environment rule. What the heck's this? Oh, right, so this is something Next.js keeps bugging me about. There's going to be a lot of changes this episode that are like improving the tooling as well as just refactoring. I mean, I do it every episode, but I feel like I did a lot this episode. There are a few cool things I should mention off the top, just teasers. One of the things, as you can see from all the post-it notes over here, I've done some stuff recently this week. I think I did like 6 or 7, some bugs. One of the features I've done though, and one of the things we're going to check out this episode is a Flash player. So we're going to have another app called Ruffle, and it's going to be able to play Flash, like FLV files, or I don't think there are FLV, SWF, I think is I don't know where I got FLV from. I think there used to be a format called FLV, but I don't know if this tool supports it. We're just going to do SWF, but that gets us some cool stuff because there's some cool Flash demos that I'm going to put in our GitHub repo for now, and that'll be a cool one. What are some other things we added? I've added some cool animations. Basic stuff like that. And then, yeah, just a lot of interesting refactors. So let's start taking a look. So watch, if I do a yarn build, I think right now it's complaining about some file changing that I've done, which is a little unfortunate. Wait a minute here. Oh, the file's already changed again. Yeah, this is so this was probably the reason I committed it, is it kept auto changing on me. So I think it's just a new thing with Next.js 11 is that it wants me to have this by default. And I kept being like, no, get out of here. But okay, if it wants this, I'm not going to keep fighting it. So let's just make that our first addition. Very simple one. Add next image env rule. This is the environment file. And I think this rule is needed now because it keeps trying to force it down my throat. So we'll make that our first node of the day. And oh, good guess, GitHub Copilot. I want to do the exact same thing again. No. All right. So let's see what the next thing is that we're supposed to do. I wonder if I type like the first letter of the commit, if it'll know. Let's see here. Fix. Let me try the word fix and see. Fix. No, the environment file. Well, that's what we just did. It's interesting that it took this and it decided. I like playing with this AI a bit, but it's kind of a waste of time. So let's not dig too deep until we get into some real code. So the next thing is I fixed some accessibility issues. This is shorthand for accessibility, this A11Y. Basically, yeah, accessibility. It's just shorthand for it. That's what it says right here. Same with this I18N, is just short for internationalization. As you can see here, those are a few terms that get thrown around, just so you guys know what's up there. So I had some rules here to disable these things, and I think I've decided, yeah, so we already had ESLinting on for the accessibility, but I had disabled it for the click events and the non-interactive. So if we put that back and then we do an ESLint, I'm worried it's going to complain about these line endings because I think the line endings might have changed in the files. Hopefully we can ignore those if it just complains about, oh, good. Oh, wait, it is. Okay. Oh, wait. There's two different issues going on. So these line endings are legit. This is the fact that Next.js keeps trying to do a CRLF line endings on the next file. And this is actually what gets me to do a change in the very near future, in a couple of commits from now. I'm going to switch to using CRLF versus LF because I looked into it a bit more. I kind of just have been defaulting to what my generic editor config file was, which was LF. But the CRLF is more common for Windows, and I think that may be why Next.js decided to try to throw a CRLF my way. Maybe if I'd been on Mac or Linux, it would have done an LF automatically. But I think I will just switch to those line endings and make that the new rule, because I think it makes more sense for the Windows one. And then also it'll stop me fighting with Next.js, because currently if I fix this, it's just going to come back again when Next.js it keeps trying to remake this environment file. So those three lines need to be in there, and it's automatically not doing the line endings that match my editor config file. So hey, Next.js people, you could fix that. Anyways, let's just focus on the rules that I just undisabled. So there were 3 cases where I was messing it up, and what was my solution here? Because I have a solution. So for the right, what I've done here, you see here we had a figure. This is where it's complaining, is the figure. I'm essentially using it like a button, kind of. And what I've decided is to use a little trick with styled components called as, to use the button component, because I have a button component right here. Oops, it's supposed to be alphabetically there. And if we go to its definition, so I have this button styled component that I already made, but the HTML element is a button element. But what you can do with styled components is you can take a button styled, like a button component, sorry, and then you can add an as tag to say, I want it to render as a figure. So that's what I'm going to do. Otherwise, I think it's okay for the figure to have this type button on it. And I do want this on key down event, because that's essentially what this accessibility issue was about. It's about the fact that I have a click event with the mouse, but I don't have anything for the keyboard for accessibility reasons, for people that don't have mouses perhaps, or are trying to do tab through the items, that kind of thing. So it's a reasonably good consideration to make. But actually, for the moment, what I've done with the on key down is just to disable it. So for buttons, I actually don't have it do anything, because that was becoming a little annoying with things like the maximize button. If you click it with the mouse and then you pressed enter, enter was also being considered a click, and then it was unmaximizing. So I've decided to just ignore key events, but that will fix this accessibility warning, because it just says, hey, consider key events. That's what it says here. Visible non-interactive elements with click handlers must have at least one keyboard listener. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this figure to a button, but I want it to render as a button, as a figure element still. So I'll add as a figure. There we go. So that's all there is to that. So now it's still going to be just like it was before, where it's going to render as a figure element, but it's going to also have these properties of a button, which has this key handler to ignore keys. And it also comes with these three things, which I've looked into, and they're actually okay in this case. But yeah, there is an argument to be made that this button does a little bit too much, perhaps. And maybe just to get this, I'm kind of going overkill. I do like the idea of these being buttons. I think maybe just button should be a little bit more generic, perhaps, because I can't really recall what this is solving, but I know getting rid of it gives me some headaches, and I know it doesn't actually cause any effect here of any consequence. So for that reason, I'm going to leave it, because it does just slot into place. And this is for the, what is this for? This is for the menu, for the right-click menu. So yeah, let's just see. We changed it now, so let's check the right-click menu. Yeah, it still looks fine. So these are figures now. And if I made it something wonky, maybe then we'd see that it's broken. Well, what would make it messed up? What if I said I wanted to render like an iframe? I wonder what that would do. No, I don't think it likes that. Wait, what happened there? Am I not running an environment, or why was that accepted? Oh, okay, yeah, I don't even have it running, so bad test. Let's get this thing running. Hopefully still runs after my little button thing. But making it an iframe should definitely not work, I'm thinking. So let's check it out. Right click. Yeah, that looks weird. But if I sway figure, there we go, it's fixed. So it does work as that way with this as syntax. So that's one fixed, but there was a couple others. Where were the other ones? I think that solves both of these. Non-interactive element interactions. Yeah, now as a button, it's not complaining about that because it's got a type as well. I believe that helps there. Let's just fix this one as well, H1. So again, it's the header, and I'm using it as a button. I'm using it to do maximize. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. In this case, we already have button being used here, so I'm just going to do it here too and say button as an H1. Button. There we go. And prettier will fix any formatting issues there. And that's it. That was that entire commit. So now we don't ignore these ESLint rules, these two here, the A11Y rules, the accessibility rules. And I'm always happy to not ignore rules. So we may even do a few more of those throughout this episode. And eventually I want to have only the rules ignored that are like necessary to be ignored. Because some of them are just wrong, basically. Or I disagree with, Some of them are rules that are like preference rules, prefer. And in those cases, it's just a matter of opinion. Let's see what Copilot says for the next line. Add A11 tests. Screw you. I'm not doing that. Okay. How dare it suggest I add tests. Okay, don't need to ignore a pattern. What the hell does that mean? Ah, okay, right. I think I'd added this ignore pattern, but then I've since removed the variables because I realized in argument form, you can just kind of leave out those arguments. So I no longer even need to do that underscore thing. I just don't even declare them. Again, minor refactor, but let's just get it done because these do make the code better, in my opinion. What next? Get out of here with those tests. I ain't doing your tests. Hopefully it stops suggesting that at some point and moves on. What's next? Don't warn error like all others. Oh, okay. Don't warn, use error. I should have said use. Okay. Right. I think one of my ESLint rules is a warn, and it's like the rest are all error. So it's like, hey, just error, dude. I don't want no warnings. Yeah, I mean, in this case, if it ever were the JSX file name or the wrong file name, I would want an error. So let's just do an error. And now there's no warnings. Anything I've written is explicit. I usually want to have an error for it. So I'm going to reword that commit. Don't warn, use error like all others. Okay. Still not the most descriptive one. Fix the build. Hey, was the build broken? Is it prescient now too? Watch the build be broken now. It broke the build. Dun dun dun. Oh yeah, powered by Red Bull today, by the way. Blue Red Bull. So let's see if the build's broken. That'd be funny, actually. Seems like it's okay if it's gotten this far. If the types are okay, it's making an optimized production build. I want to see though, because it's got me freaked out now. Why would it suggest that? It went from it's like make a test, now fix the build. Ah, there, the build's fine. Wrong again, Copilot. All right. What next? I don't need the import resolver anymore. All right, this is me always just trying to clean up ESLint things. Since I've extended the Next.js ESLint rules, I think they're slowly but surely kind of fixing stuff for me. I'm gonna undo this file change. This came from the build, but we'll deal with that when it makes sense too. ESLint. Here, this settings block here. This was the last vestige, basically. This, at some point, I had to clarify this, or else I was just getting a bunch of failed imports. But I just keep testing because I saw there was like an update at some point to the Next.js rules, and now I don't think I need that piece anymore. So that's always good. And oh, what happened? Oh yeah, these are just those CRs. We're gonna fix those later. But it didn't complain about a bunch of imports, which was what that code was fixing at one point. So now I like what's clean about my ESLint rules now is it's just the extensions, the plugins, and the custom rules. Nothing, no tweaking that needed. I just extend a million different things, got a bunch of plugins, and then a couple rules to clarify some stuff. So I'm pretty happy with that from an ESLint point of view, but I'm always going to tweak it. I think I might have a few more commits here, perhaps, where I add to it. Or I think I have a couple, actually. Like there's this thing called Unicorn. I think we'll get into it, but I add a bunch more auto rules that find some stuff. So I don't need the import resolver anymore. Yippee. I actually still need it. I don't need a configuration for it. So that's how I could have worded that, but I did not. So here's the add unicorn and adjust for its rules. This might be a somewhat bigger one. Yeah, okay. So this unicorn is kind of cool. Unicorn ESLint. This is it here. ESLint plugin unicorn. Various awesome ESLint rules. Yeah. You might want to check out XO, which includes this. I think I tried XO and it was too extreme about the formatting. I have my own formatting preferences, so I like the Unicorn plus all the stuff that I've got. I think XO mostly had stuff I had. So you see here, Unicorn has a lot of rules, and it's like the more the better. I like them, you know, but some of them are a little pushy, and we're gonna go through those, and we're gonna go quick. We're gonna go rapid fire, guys. Just so you guys know, guys and girls, whoever happens to be watching. Yarn add ESLint? No, we need to do -- dev. We don't want this getting into our dependencies. Okay, so we got Unicorn installed. Now the next step, as it says here on the page, so we need to specify the plugin, and then we can also, if you look at the bottom here, it'll say we can specify the recommended extensions. So that's what I'm gonna do. Go into the ESLint config, get some of this junk out of the way temporarily, just so we have a bit of breathing room. We're gonna do it alphabetically because I like to do it alphabetically, but the order does matter here. So you do want to make sure, so some of these at the end here are not alphabetical, and that's because their packages have specifically said in their installs, put these at the bottom. So I've had to kind of figure out which bottom to go on which, and putting Unicorn here seemed fine, basically. But there's a chance of conflicting rules depending on how you put them. Here in the plugins, it can be alphabetical. All these load. I don't think the order matters. And I'm just going to paste in all the rules that I've ignored, and we're going to look through them for a second here. So I've already got, these are the rules, basically, that I've decided are no, no, no. That's funny, it's trying to add stuff here. No duplicated blocks. Get out of here, Copilot. So these ones here are the ones I've decided not. So for file name case, I disagreed with it, basically. It's because I do the case based on components having capital letters, which is how React suggests it. So, and in a few other cases, this was just wrong. I tried to customize it to make the rule very explicit to what file names I do want, but there were edge cases, and at the same time, the rule couldn't be fine-grained enough. Import style, yeah, I disagreed with this. I think it was just, I have my own custom import plugin here, so I disagreed with how it was suggesting to import styles. This no array for each, this is where it's suggesting using for of, but I think in all the examples, it really just messed with the flow. Same with this no using reduce. It's like Reduce usually means you're making it more complex. It's like, well, in my case, it's actually making it better. So go F yourself, you know? So for these ones, these are just opinion ones. Same with all these ones here. This numeric separator, in the last episode, we tried to add numeric separators and I decided I don't like them. These preferences here, prefer append to append child. It's like, yeah, append does more, but append child is actually exactly what I want in all the cases I'm using it. This prefer module here just gets picky about files that are not relevant. Same with this node protocol thing, that one's wrong. And the abbreviation where it's trying to turn all my props into properties and stuff, it's like, no thank you. So that explains the ones I've ignored, but if we do a scan now before I've actually fixed any files, I think we will find I've broken some rules now. And for that, we're going to go through them. So how many rules have I got here that I broke? Okay, 14 things I did wrong. So let's just go through them. So the first one here is a file where I've already ignored a bunch of stuff. This is a file where I've copied most of the code and it runs only in node console, only on build. So I'm just going to add another exception for Unicorn to say, don't worry about process exit. Here where it's okay. Here console log is okay. Here requires is okay. I've already made some exceptions, so just going to make more. That's one. What's the next one? Use webamp. Right, it's complaining about these undefineds and it's totally correct. So we're going to get rid of these. So this one here, we don't need. What have I done here? I'm just going to copy the way I did it, actually. I switched this into, actually, I'll paste both and show you here. What did I do? Right, so I've gone from having set windows, I'm having, what have I done here? What have I done? This piece here, basically. I decided to extract that out into its own variable called window state. And then from here, I get position. This allows me to do the default here, but not have to do any defaulting here on the variables. And it allows TypeScript to work properly, so it's just preferred. It's the format that I'm kind of moving to in general to get away from having to do default definitions. So yeah, that one was another one. Nice fix. This is an interesting fix that it looks like I did. Okay, let's take a peek at this. I feel like I changed this and then changed this back. I hope that's not the case. Looking at it, I did not change this back, so I'm just double checking that I didn't revert this change so I don't waste your guys' time showing it to you. So this is in regards to file drop, and I'm using onload, and something Unicorn's complaining about here. Where is it? Shouldn't we see the error here represented? That's weird. I would have expected some squiggly lines. Let's just try to find it in the message here. On line 50. Right, yeah, this is the line. I don't see the error, but whatever. So it is saying, where to go? Prefer add event listener over onload. Right, so I looked into this, and add event listener does have some cool things where you can set the event as a one-time thing. Now in this case with onload, it pretty much is a one-time thing anyways, but just the fact that that event listener is sitting there, I don't know if it is. Perhaps the onload event is special and it knows to just remove itself. I don't know if that's the case, but I do like that add event listener can be more explicit. So I've decided to just switch to that method. So what I'm done here, if you see here, we had reader onload, and I've just changed it to this. So now I'm using an add event listener, in this case, a load event versus saying onload, and then same callback as before, with the exact same variables and such. And then the third thing you pass in is the options to the add event listener, and I've created this constant called one-time passive event. And I'm going to import that from the constants here. And then we'll jump to the constants and we're going to add that. And I'll show you guys what that looks like as far as options. Let me just, where the heck does that go? Here it is. So I put that below this one here. So that's the one-time passive event, which is basically this add event listener options type. And the two options I'm using are once, so it only does the event listener once and then removes it. And it's also passive. And what passive means is that I have to look it up because I don't remember. Let's take a peek. Let's look at the documentation. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go, options. So I've got once, indicating that the listener should be invoked at most once after being added. If true, the listener would be automatically removed. I like that, sounds cleaner. And then passive indicates that the function specified will never call prevent default. Right. So that's true. So I'm perfectly fine. If perhaps that makes it more performant to be explicit, I'm not sure it does, but I'm perfectly happy to assume that it does, you know? And those were the only two options that seemed relevant. So I've used those, and I'm imagining that the event listener has in some way become more optimized from it. So we'll get rid of that onload one. It's a little bulkier, a little bigger, but I think we get more for it. Oh man, I killed the server doing that. How'd I do that? There we go. It didn't like that. I think it's fixed, but I could be wrong. Okay, what's the next issue here? The next one is the sidebar on line 38. The OL, what's it complaining about here? What did I need to do? So I've switched it. I'm trying to understand myself what I've done here. Ah, yes. So I made a component here, which is a functional component with the props here as the first argument. And what it was complaining about, do not pass function directly to map. So the idea here is that the map function actually passes two arguments. The data, the button data, which is here in the props, but then the second prop is like the index or something. I can't recall exactly. But basically you're passing an extra prop that you shouldn't be expecting of it. So what I've done is I've switched it to being like this. So now the buttons map. And rather than just passing sidebar directly in, I get the button and then I pass it here. And then I also specify the key here. And by doing it there, I don't need to specify the key here, which actually seemed pretty disconnected. So I don't really like that I had to do that anyways that way. I like specifying the key here right by the piece. And that makes sense, I suppose. Yeah, each one of these should have its own key. The sidebar entries have top and bottom buttons, and within those, they also have specific buttons that should have their own keys. And this helps React for rendering purposes. So that's that fix. Now the next one I think is somewhat big. What is this? Move arrow function render frame to the outer scope. Right. So I think this render frame function here is kind of uselessly inside of the mouse enter when it could just be more generic and could be outside of it. So I've rewritten it here like that. And if we compare that, let's just take this one here and just chop it right out and see what it looked like in comparison. I think it's pretty much the same, except that I pass a few variables now. Let's move this out of the way for a second. Oh, I think I'm checking the preview element beforehand now. So I'm just both focused on the import piece here. Import, that's the same. To PNG is the same. Yeah, everything else is the same. I've also switched from the onload to the add event listener piece as well again. Same change I did in the last one, and using this one-time passive. But the event is the same. Although here it's a callback now because I'm passing set preview source as the callback, and I'm also passing preview element. So if render frame occurs, that's because it's already checked this. So that function's gone from there now. And now this has been changed quite drastically. Looks like I also had another onload here. Did I? No. I'm going to do a technique that I've been doing throughout these latest streams, where I just dump the new file in and then we just take a peek at the change. So if we look at it here. So yeah, it's that function that I just copied. And then this was the piece here. Yeah, so I removed it from here. I added the checking here. And then I made a render function that runs render frame, and that's what I'm passing. So instead of having render frame, I have render. And why am I doing that? Because then I store preview element. So preview element is, and the set preview source. Right, so I make render not need those things because render is also being passed into the set interval here. So now I don't need to make that a function. I can just pass in this and it already has the two pieces that I needed. Right, so that simplified that and allowed me to keep using it the same way. And that was the only other change I did there. So yeah, I just extracted out render frame, which was what it suggested. And it's cool that it suggests that stuff. That's another thing that I like about this unicorn is like, if those suggestions are good, then it's like, I'm not going to make that mistake again because now I have this linting that's going to like warn me right ahead of time. So that was this one. And we did the listener and we did the moving it out to the outer scope, which made it more efficient. We're going to fix these later. Again, that's the CR versus CRLF. Or sorry, LF versus CRLF. And then there's just a few more cases here of these preferring to add event listener for onload, on error, and onload. I think, yeah, for on error, it also would be the same. It's passive and it's a one-time thing because in the case of this error, I think it would only ever happen once. If it happens, it's like, okay, bail on the entire thing. Don't worry about anything else. So yeah, so let's take a peek at that function, at that file as well. And I might do the same little copy paste maneuver here, just to get it done, get her done. I'm just double checking if there's any other files I changed. No, this is the last one. So the functions file, and I'm just going to paste in what I did, and then we're going to quickly review the file change just to take a peek. So again, I added in that one-time passive. So yeah, very simply here. So this was on error, on load, and I just did add event listener, error, load, and then the exact same thing, resolve, reject, just like it was before. And same here. And I see I've slipped this fix in. Oh, was that mentioned here? Ah, yeah, that was another unicorn thing that it mentioned. It wanted me to be consistent with these, not using get element, but using query selector whenever possible. And I actually have switched to using query, I think, in some cases. Yeah, here I was using query selector, here, somewhere else as well. Here, I think. So I think I was moving over to using that. Document.get. How many of those do I still have? Yeah, it was just this one, right? This is the only one left. So yeah, it prefers, instead of using the .get element by ID, .get whatever, to switch to this query selector system. And I've actually decided that it is kind of correct to use this. It is better, I think, because it returns an easier to use object a lot of the times in some cases, and it's just more consistent. So I prefer to pass the selector like this. In this case, nothing had to change. The selector of link is the same. And that's the other differences. So let's do another scan, and I think we fixed all of Unicorn's complaints, and there'll be 3 errors left that are going to be those CRLFs, if I'm correct here. Yeah. So we fixed all the Unicorn issues, and now we're using Unicorn linting as well, which is just even more rules, which are good. But we had to ignore some of these because I don't agree with them. Okay, what did I make that commit message? Add Unicorn and adjust for its rules. Yeah, more linting. I'm a bit of a lint freak, I guess, if that's a thing. Next up, right, so this use double click, sorry. This one concerns me a little bit if it made sense what I did here. So there's this hook called use double click, and I don't think it ever needed to be a hook, really. I'm trying to think why it was. Like, see, before, the only thing about it that was a hook is this use ref, where I was keeping track of the timer. But at the same time, this reference in this scope, I think, would be scoped here anyway. So this is already part of this scope and kind of can keep track of itself. And I think that's the discovery that I made. So I've moved the double click function here into the functions for now, and I've removed the timer piece, or sorry, the use ref piece is just now just let timer or undefined. And then I do set timer, clear timer, timer equals undefined. Yeah, basically instead of the .current stuff, that's all I did. So no longer a ref, but I don't think it needed to be a ref in this case. It doesn't seem like it needed to be. I'm lost as to whether it needed to be. So I think we're just going to switch it to not being a hook, because in this case, it's not necessary. I think it's just overhead to make it a hook if it doesn't need to be. So we're going to import these, import the constants, and we have that double click function there. The use double click file, we can completely delete then, which was, where the heck was it? I don't even know where it is. Use double click components system. Oh, so it's right here in the root. Ah, there it was. Yeah, it was kind of out of place there anyways, this hook in the middle of all these subfolders. So we don't need that no more. Now we need to fix anywhere we were using it. So let's take a look at the imports here. Here, it's going to switch to be this import. And we're just going to say double click, basically, I think. Which file is this? The title bar? No, this is the file entry. I'm trying to follow along here. Yeah, that's all I had to change. So that's pretty simple, honestly. That was just now it's not a hook. I don't know if that adds too much overhead, to be honest, but I don't think you should make something a hook if it doesn't need to be a hook. That seems unnecessary. So here was the only other place I was using it. We're switching to this import. And then we don't need to do this anymore. We can just jump right to this, I think. Wait a minute. Yeah. In this case, we just do that. And then here, this doesn't, before I had to do this here because it couldn't be, the hook couldn't be in a conditional place because of how hooks are. But now it can be. So I will just take that and put that here, conditionally. There we go. That was another reason why I preferred non-hook, because then it can be conditional. So if we see here, one click does its thing, one click. If I go here, one click opens like expected. If I double click, there we go. Single, no, double, yeah. So double click still works. So until I see otherwise, I'm not going to use that as a hook anymore. And that was it for that change. So double click, not a hook. Did I close the show notes? What happened here? Wait a second, don't warn. Oh no. Did I not update for the unicorn one? I think that's the case. Yeah. So we need to update the show notes. That's the most important thing. There we go. So I added the... Oh man, I missed 2 show notes now that I look at my commit history. Because remember I did this one. Oops. So the first one was remove import resolver from config. There we go. And then I added unicorn and adjusted for its rules, and now I'm doing the double click one. Yeah, geez, I got ahead of myself. I don't like when I do that. So double click there, no more conditional, which makes it simpler, and move it out to here, into this file that's getting a little too big, generically named functions. Not a huge fan of that name. Add a hook for the new one. That's a little generic. Nice try, Copilot. So next one here, extract styling to TS file. Which styling? For the icon? Oh, styled icon. Right. I think this was the only case where I had import style within a non-styled file. Yeah, if we look here, yeah, you see everything here, styled, but these two not. Well, actually, that's fine. The button is the generic button, and the icon is the generic icon, and they're already in the styles folder. So why did I even do this change? I'm not a fan of this change anymore. This is, yeah, I don't know what the thinking was. Did I change anything else of any relevance? Doesn't look like it. I turned the icon into such a generic file, and what did I get for it? Very little. Okay, we're not even going to do this commit. That was a waste of time. It's good to think about it, though. It's a good thought exercise. What's this one here? Auto fix more stuff on save. Oh, okay. Oh, right. This is something I saw when I was looking at somebody else's like boilerplate setup, is they also had this, code actions on save, organize imports, and fix all. These are awesome. These are the future of what I wanted to do. I don't know if I'm doing this right now, in fact. I might not be. I might have even committed with it wrong. And if that's the case, let's see here. If ESLint finds new problems, then my ESLint's not working. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So these 2 imports are wrong now. So there's 2 things I'm going to do. I'm going to close VS Code and reopen it because the rules are wrong. So let's try that first. So close VS Code. Yeah, ESLint wasn't picking up that I had those imports wrong because we didn't see any squiggly lines when we should have. So let's let this boot up again. Wake up. That's the change we're about to do. Get out of here with those tests. Oh, sorry guys, you guys don't see my code editor now. So when I reopened it, it didn't, my streaming didn't pick it up. There we go. So we're back into this thing. Now, if you remember, I ran yarn ESLint and I found errors that I put in my commit, which is something I always dislike. we're going to slip this in with this autofix commit because now we're going to autofix this. So it's these two here. So let's open these up and see. Yeah, see now it's wrong. Now watch, when I press Control S, nothing happens. But if I hover over this, I could do a quick fix to it. So it's fixable. So that's what I want to do here. I want to go into my VS Code setting in my settings, and I want to add this here. Editor, code actions on save, organize my imports, and then fix anything you can in the editor or in the ESLint or in the StyleLint config auto fixes, which is cool. So now when I come back here and I press Control S, there we go. It fixed it for me. It just put it in the right place. And if I go to the other one here and I go Control S, fixes it for me. So we're going to use that in the future. If you guys seen all my previous streams, I'm always auto fixing stuff. So it's nice to not have this. One caveat that I've noticed is with StyleLint, if I comment out something in the styled components and then I autosave, it makes a mess of it, honestly. So I just don't comment stuff out in my styles anymore. I delete it when I'm not looking at it, I'm not using it, you know. Maybe I'll show you guys that. That'll probably happen during the stream. I'll probably make a mistake and you'll see. Anyways, so auto fix more stuff on save. And I'm not even going to mention these because these never should have been in the wrong spot. I was hoping those would auto fix, but I forgot that we didn't have that yet. Now we do. Auto fix more stuff on save. Nice. Another cool little thing to have in your repository by default if you can. What issues? I fixed all the issues. Okay, next. So that was all that I did that day. Now we can move on to the next day. Missing default object. What default object was I missing? Oh, here. So this is an annoying thing, is it actually doesn't tell you when these are going to fail. I wish that there was some way I could double check all of these. I wanted to do default objects whenever it makes sense. In this case, it didn't. So I think there's a scenario where it crashes, but it's not enough to cause a linting error. We'll just fix it here. There we go. And I think there's more of these that we'll run into, but the only way I found to run into them right now is just like having the system crash. But ideally, I would always want the defaults in the right place there so that kind of thing doesn't happen. Not easy. Easier said than done. Missing default object. What part was I missing again? Right, missing default object. Default empty object. Empty object to avoid runtime error. There we go. A little more descriptive. Yeah, that's one of them. There's probably more. What's the next thing here? Simpler v86 sizing. Oh, this was a fun one. This was a nice one to do. So this was something with v86 was messed up. Do I want to share Firefox to show you guys that it was messed up? Not particularly. Let's. I probably should though. Let me share Firefox. Let me open Firefox first of all. Oh, you guys can't see me anymore. Here, I'll show my face while I get a Firefox session ready for you guys. I don't know if the sizing on the window is going to be perfect, but it'll be good enough. All right, so we're switching. We're going window capture. Yeah. FF, I'll call it. There we go. There's a window. And now I'm going to also get the video capture back so you guys can see me again. I'll use my existing camera. There we go. I'm back. Whoa, I'll make myself smaller. This is, I was not prepared for this, guys. I'm sorry. So we're going to just lock these things in place. I'll make Firefox a little bigger so it fits the screen. So basically in Firefox, it pretty much the app looks the same, but not exactly. Not exactly. Oh, right. It's not running right now. The dev environment is no longer running because when I closed VS Code, it turned it off. There we go, it's back. So I'm gonna switch to Firefox again. I'll refresh this page. So watch, so if I open up Linux here, you'll see here on the right, maybe it's not super obvious. Yeah, you see it's cutting off stuff here. And it's not, like it does actually cut off a little bit, but it's cutting off improperly. It's not wrapping. Like in this case here, I think, yeah, regulator database, there probably was a D here or something. And if we inspect and look at that element, you can see that you see over here, the line is going outside. So the window didn't resize as much as it was supposed to. And that was because of some miscalculations on is it my fault? Yeah, perhaps it is. I mean, I programmed it, so. But basically, we're going to fix those problems in a nice, easy way. I should show you guys the browser again. So if I go to v86, one revelation I had was that I wasn't really using their CSS properly. So you see here, if I open this, their Calibri, I noticed that the font didn't quite look like mine. It was a monospaced font, but it wasn't the one I was using necessarily. And I think that's the key, is that the font sizing was not quite the same kind of monospace between Chrome and Firefox, because I wasn't specifying it quite right. So I noticed their settings here. I've used their settings. I no longer needed this height and width. I don't know why I needed that. But what I've done is I switched the div, the div is text mode. So in video mode, like if it switches to like the GUI or something, it'll use the canvas element. But if it's text, it's like a div that's filled with these lines, these span lines. And I needed to specify these things. I needed a normal line height. I didn't need the weight of the font to be bold, but it looks nice bold. I've gone with 14. The v86 webpage I think uses 15 or 16. And this was the key here, was using this specific font string of this like Liberation Mono, Deja Vu Sans Mono, Courier New Monospace, versus before where I think it was just defaulting to monospace. So we're going to use that for styled v86. And I think that's only part of the puzzle, because I had a bunch of changes in place to compensate for my misunderstandings of what was going on. And we have to remove that as well. So you see here, that's just that change, just like I said. So the next little piece is just here. We don't need to set any styling here. Before we were setting some styling, that's not necessary. So we're no longer going to return styling here either. We're just going to run the use v86 screen size that kind of auto sizes. Because the v86 one, I don't allow any resizing or maximizing, because the size is very linked to like the emulator. So I don't want to mess with that. In this case, it just doesn't work well. Maybe in the future I'll get it going. So we got the div and the canvas there. I wonder if I could alphabetically rearrange these. Let's not mess with it. I'll probably break something if I do that. So that was the next piece. And then in the types, it looks like I've cleaned up something here. What did I... Oh, the mode callback, right. I don't need the mode anymore, because I no longer... Before I had, if we go into the screen size piece, I had this mode check here where there's an event listener you can do on the emulator that says if a set screen mode triggers to know whether you're graphical or not. And I had like totally different sizing logic based on that. It's just a mess. I don't need it, you know? So now I'm going to simplify my types here. Like so. There we go. Wait a minute. Oops. There we go. It's like that. So now the event listener, the callback is always a size callback. I only care about either the graphical size or the text size has changed. And then the big one here is the screen size one. I'm going to do the file copy paste maneuver, and we'll take a look. I've really shrunk it down, I think. So yeah, let's take a peek at what I changed there. So the types is just like I said, I got rid of mode callback. And then here's the big one. So I changed a lot. But if we look at it here, so yeah, I don't need a return anymore. I'm no longer setting that monospaced font with a certain height. That was wrong. I should have just had that monospaced string. Line height, I was doing dynamically. That's not necessary. Position relative, that doesn't need to be there. And this is graphical, doing 2 pixel difference. That was a mess. So you see here, I had this like Y, and I had Y4, Y3. Yeah, they were all a mess. So don't need the mode listener anymore. Got rid of those. Yeah, this whole compensation for the sizes was wrong, or was not necessary. You see here I had like cols divided by 2 plus 4, and this one was plus 3. Now it's much simpler. We'll get to that as the last step. I don't need the line height from the theme, so we can probably get rid of that. Because yeah, I was keeping track of line height, but that can just be set in one place in the styled component, and then I can just infer it here, I believe. So yeah, I didn't need that. I didn't need the mode callback anymore. I don't need to keep track of the state of graphical. Didn't need the theme. Didn't need to convert things from the theme to do math on them. Made it a lot simpler. So if we look at what I've done now for the set for text, so graphics is still pretty much the same. Just take the width and height and just set them. They're correct already. But for the screen size, you get the cols and you get the rows. Now the columns, we don't need to know because we can just get the width of one line and one's enough. But we do need to know how many rows there are so we can calculate the height. So basically what I do when the screen size is text and it updates, you get this callback. And now what was I doing before? Yeah, before I was taking the cols and the rows and I was doing wonky math on it. It was just a mess. Now what I do is I look for one of those line items, those like, if it's 25 lines of text, I grab the last one and it's representative. They're all the same. And then I just take that one as the basis. I get its height and its width, and then I use that to do the multiple. So if we get a height and a width from it, then I update the size. I do the amount of rows there are times the size of one of those rows and the width of just the row, because they're all the same width. So that's a lot cleaner. You see, it's a very simple file compared to what it was before. Before it was 57 lines, and now it's like 39 basically. And then finally, we just remove that piece from the theme that we no longer need. Styles, common, where is it here? Sizes, window, here we go, line height. So it was 14, like we said, but we don't need it here because we're not doing math on it anymore. We're just gonna put it right in the styled component. And this is called simpler v86 sizing to fix for Firefox. So we've gone through the changes. Wait a minute, what's it complaining about here? Do I not need to pass this anymore? What changed here? Oh, right. I need to pass this screen ref now. I wasn't passing it before. Now I grab the screen element so that I can get the span. Is that correct? Let's double check that, because I actually forgot about that little detail myself. Here it is here. All right, so I've added screen container and I'm using it. Okay, I'm just using it right here and then doing a query select. So I could have done a query select on the document, but I like this cleaner approach where I get exactly the right element. And then I know I'm just saying, hey, just give me the last span within this little element, because I know that element is just made up of a canvas or a div full of spans. So I say, give me the last one. And the reason I say the last one is it was having an issue when there was like a first one, because it could sometimes be empty and it was causing like no width or small width. But for some reason doing last was better. So this pretty much stopped all the snafus. That's the technical term for it. And let's take a peek at it then. Let's test it out. So let's try it here and see that I haven't broken it in Chrome. Open up Linux. So there we go. It auto-sized. Looks nice. Looks more monospaced. And yeah, you see the wrappings exactly as you'd expect now, where you can see when one line ends, it exactly starts on the next line. Like here, F-A-I-L-E-D, failed. And the bottom's perfectly there, so you can see the cursor. Okay, good. So it was already pretty much perfect on Chrome. Although actually, I'm not sure it was perfect on Chrome, and now it is better even. But let's try Firefox now too. So open Linux. And if we should see pretty much the same correct size now with the proper wrapping. And I think we do. Let's wait to see an example here when it stops. But yeah, I think it's the same exact thing. Yeah, here we go, F-A-I-L-E-D. There we go. So between both browsers, it's using the correct font sizing now. And looks a lot more clean. So, oops, I just closed Firefox. Well, we don't need it no more. There's no more things I think that I'm fixing in Firefox. We'll leave that there just in case, but I don't think there's any more. So what's next? Next is to commit this. That was a nice little fix. Simpler v86 sizing plus Firefox. Plus fixes Firefox. Or I should say which fixes Firefox. I don't like any of those. Committed. There we go. So that's another one down. Let's clean up device memory. Yeah, I think there was just a little bit. Right. So in the last episode, I deleted this calculating the memory to decide how much emulator memory we give them, because I was only able to know about a very small amount of memory anyways. I just decided to stop doing that calculation, but I didn't clean up that little type there. So now it's clean. More code deleted. Always nice. Next up is upgraded lint staged Husky. Oh, right. This was a big one. So it turns out when I switched from Husky version 5 or 4, whatever I was on, to 6, or now I'm on 7, I think I decided to stay with the old config, thinking, hey, you know, I like this format. I don't like having to have a file. Well, if you want to stay with Husky, they pretty much make you do it the new way. So what can I say? I got to do it the new way. We're going to look at the config here. I'm going to look at lint staged npm. And we're just going to redo lint staged basically. So yeah, I'm actually just going to do it just like I'm doing it from scratch. So I'm going to do yarn remove husky and lint staged. We'll remove those things there. We'll keep the config here because I think it uses that config in the import. So go back to the lint staged advice here. Let's just go to their GitHub because it's in dark mode, which is way better. And I think they have a yarn suggestion here. How do you do it with yarn? That's funny. They only tell you npm, yet they themselves use yarn. Oh, okay, right. npx. That's okay. npx works fine. So we run this npx command that does a lint staged install basically in the package. And it's going to do most of it, but we want a little bit of change because I'm not quite happy with it. So what does it change so far? So it changed my package file. It added this prepare command to Husky. That's important. It got rid of the Husky part here. Okay, good. We don't need it there no more. This is totally unnecessary. I already have my own ESLint rule and my own silent rules. I don't like their cache logic, so we're not going to use that piece. We'll get rid of that. Otherwise, the change is fine. And it also updated Husky slightly. It looks like the version changed a little bit, but that's nothing. So now it's got this prepare command. We're going to run that. Yarn prepare. That runs the Husky and sets up the hooks. So I think possibly if other people took out this repo, they would need to do that. But that's just part of Husky. That's just how it is. So this little 6 thing that gets made is just totally unnecessary file. That's just part of the npx process I've noticed happen sometimes. What's next? So this Git Ignore, I don't like this one. So within this Husky folder, it made a underscore folder and it put a Git Ignore file in there. I'm going to delete this Git Ignore file because I don't like nested Git Ignores. I'm just going to put this in my main Git Ignore to be very clear. So up here, I'll just say in the Husky folder, also ignore the underscore folder rather than having a Git Ignore file in there. And now if we look at the Husky file, it's got this file called pre-commit that has the lint staged command. That was the command we were running before. This is just their boilerplate. This is part of what prepare does. This is what we need essentially. So that part's okay. I'm also going to ignore the Husky folder for prettier ignore because prettier was complaining about it a little bit, about its sh files. It wanted to try to change them. We don't need prettier to mess with those. And then other than that, I think there was one other piece I wanted to fix. There's something I changed in the prettier command, but I'm not sure why. Let's try to run it now. Let's do yarn prettier and see what happens. I think it causes an error. Let's just try without changing the prettier command, but I think we'll get an error and then it'll make sense. So first off, let's just see, because something else changed here that I didn't want to change. That's correct. The pre-commit file, the package file. Yep. This, no, get rid of that. Don't change that on me because it's just going to keep changing. It's just a fight, like I said. Okay, great. So we got our Git Ignore, we got our prettier ignore, we updated Husky. So now we're using the new version of Husky. Now what that means is that when we do this commit, it's going to run this stuff that I thought it was doing, but it actually hadn't been doing lately. So when I've committed staged files, I thought it was doing prettier, ESLint, and silent to it, but it wasn't because I messed up Husky. At one point it was, but when a Husky changed to like version 5, it no longer worked that way. So let's try it out. And we'll see if we need that other prettier change here. Let's try it. So upgraded, lint staged, and Husky. I'll try to commit that and we'll see if it'll run. Yeah, so it failed on me. You guys don't see the error. Let me go open git log. So we see here, prettier failed with no parser could be inferred for .gitignore. So what's happening is it takes all the files that changed and tries to dump them in here at the end of this prettier command. And prettier doesn't like that. Prettier only wants to run for the files that it wants to run for. So when you run the command yarn prettier, it does a default extensions that it supports. But when you just try passing in files, it complains. So what I found is that it's easy enough to fix. Is just that my auto prettier command will have another command called ignore unknown. So when these unknown errors happen, it's just going to ignore them. So we'll add this to our staged changes. We'll go back to our terminal. And now when I commit, it should be okay this time with it. Because it's not going to, there we go. So that also tests the fact that it did run because now my commits are properly failing when they should, which is nice. So that's just another layer of protection we've given ourselves. upgraded lint staged in Husky. And all those changes were necessary. We're here. Fix icon prop export. What was broken about it? What have I done here? I think I moved something. Oh, this is just more of that silly mess. Yeah, because remember, I didn't do this in the end. I didn't make a styled icon and an icon. So I don't think anything needs to change here. I think this is, yeah, that, I don't know what that is. I hate that. Another commit to ignore. Here we go. Here's the time we switched to CRLF. So we got to switch this one to CRLF. There's two places we have to switch it. In our editor config file, we go, our end of line files will now be CRLF, control, return, and then line feed, which is like the Windows style, versus line feed, which is more the Mac and Linux, Unix style. So we'll fix it here. And then in Git attributes as well, we say for this repository, our main end of line is the CRLF. So we fix those two. And now if we run Prettier, it's going to go through all of that and change it all, because Prettier automatically picks up based on either Git attributes or the editor config. I don't know, but Prettier knows it. So let's run Prettier now. And as you'll see, every file is going to change. There we go. So now it shows we got about 90 different changes. Now, most of those are just line feed changes, so they're not actually going to register. 161 actually. Okay. But this commit is only going to really show those two files that changed. The two where I went from LF to CRLF. So switching to CRLF. And this also will fix the next environment file. So now whenever Next.js builds remakes it, it's not going to complain about the line feeds. So that's just a little project. Hey, whoa, what did that do there? Look at that. Switching to CRLF for Windows. That's true. I'll use theirs, you know. Did it hear me talking? The Copilot. All right, so that's all I did this day. How many more commits I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plenty more days. Pretty much did a little bit every day. So we're an hour in already. Let's take a peek at the first one then. Lock peak height. Right. I think the peak, so the little peak window here, when you hover over an item, like so, I think the height is a little wrong there. It should have been a little taller, I believe. Yeah, right. Currently it was like width was 100. Sorry, it was like width was 150. And it should have been based on height, and width should have been the thing that was dynamic. So we're just going to change that. And I feel like if I don't just copy this, I'm going to make a mistake. So I'm just going to copy it. We'll go to that file, which is the styled peak. And we'll change that little piece. Yeah, there we go. So remove the width, and then instead of width 100% on the image, we'll say height has to be 82. So now if we go back to this and we hover, there we go. So actually it looks a tiny bit smaller, but this is more correct. So now if I were to, let's say, make this bigger and make this bigger, and we hover, that's still more like how it should look. That's nicer. Okay. Back to the code then. So we're gonna lock the peak height at 82 pixels, just like Windows. Fix timers for peak. What's wrong with the timers? Oh, right. So I wasn't properly clearing the timers, I think. And that was causing an issue here where it would try to, every time mouse enter would occur, it was making a new timer, which of course is not what I wanted. And I didn't notice that because when it's performant enough and the timers weren't really doing anything, but I was making a bunch of them. So now I just say, if neither of the mouse timer or the preview timer is set and you've mouse entered, then go into this, because this will set the mouse one, and then when the mouse one triggers a timeout, it'll set an interval on the preview. And instead it was doing this every time I mouse entered, which was, is that an issue actually? Maybe in theory it's not. I think it can be, because if you if I open up a window here and then I peek and then I go out from the bottom, it's counting that as mouse leave. I guess there's some weird scenarios where a mouse leave might not trigger and you might get another mouse enter. And in those scenarios, you don't want it to run a second timer. But the expectation is, as long as you got that mouse leave and mouse enter, that it should be one or the other. So I don't know why. Maybe this isn't an issue, actually. Now I'm questioning if it is. I think it's reasonable to check anyways, because if this is already set, these are both refs. So if either of these are set, then you don't want them to set again. So I don't know if it's happening, but let's just say we're being safe. I think what might have been happening is that at one point I turned off the mouse leave hook because I was doing work on the peak element. And then that might have been causing multiple mouse enters, and I just didn't consider that leave should be triggered, which would clear these. And then here it would be okay to reset them. Does that make sense though? Yeah, I think it's good to check. It's good to set them undefined and to check here. So let's not think about it any further. It's a minor change anyways. Just adding an undefined to the timer and checking for it before you set it again. But based on the flow of the code, you'd assume it wouldn't be necessary. But sometimes those edge cases, you know, and that's where these safety checks can kind of help you. I do the safety dance. What's this one? Clear timers on min and no max. What's that mean? Oh, I think I have changed the way this works. Yeah. So for peak events, I was having there not be a peak event if it's minimized the window. But I also noticed that Windows does allow that. So while the window is minimized, if you hover over the taskbar entry, it will show you a preview of the window, even though it's not visible on the screen. And it'll actually show it on the screen if you hover over it long enough. Currently, we don't support that. And we don't support maximize, I realize. After last episode, someone pointed out a bug, and then I started looking into what the problem is. And it has to do with like, when I maximize, I'm like, my maximize is like a translate, it's like a transform of CSS. And the HTML to image does not play nicely with that, unfortunately. So this change here is basically just me accepting the failure for now. I've put a note on the board here to have peak support minimized and maximized. But for now, it's just not tenable, as they say. I don't know who they is, but that's what I'm saying. That's the word going around town. So if we look at the changes here, it's not too much. What did I do here? I also added maximize to check for maximized. And if it's maximized or minimized, I was considering that to be the mouse is leaving. So yeah, if it's minimized or maximized, trigger a mouse leave event, and mouse leave clears all that stuff and basically makes it go away. And same thing here. If it's maximized or minimized, don't even put the events on the thing anymore. Simple enough. So yeah, one day down the road, I'll fix that. But for now, peak is only limited to be, if it's, let's say you have this window over top of this one, and then this one here, you hover the taskbar, you can see a preview of it, even though you can't visually see it. But if you were to minimize or to maximize that window, currently that's not supported. But I have some ideas for how to support it in the future, so it's on my board. And for now, we've disabled it. Let's go to see what the next thing is. Created basic Ruffle Flash app. Okay, so here's the app. Here's where I made it. Oh man, this is going to require a swig here. So a lot changed here. First off, let's look at Ruffle. Let's see what Ruffle is. Why did I call it Ruffle? So Ruffle is an existing WebAssembly tool. WebAssembly is something we use a lot here in our OS. It's almost like the main framework that I use for my apps, actually. My emulators all use WebAssembly, and this does too. Ruffle is a Flash player emulator built in the Rust programming language and then compiled to WebAssembly, in this case, and to other languages. So if you see here in the downloads, they have Windows, Linux, Mac, browser extensions, and then they also have this thing called self-hosted on a website. And you can basically host your own version of a Flash player. Now, what's the point of a Flash player? Who cares? Well, if you go to like this newgrounds.com website, and I actually have a link here. Where is it here? Flash, here, Windows Parody Collection. There's some really fun Windows versions, basically. that are like almost like my emulator, where it's like Windows inside of Windows kind of thing. So I can also do it with these parody ones and with other cool Flash things like I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the badger mushroom. Here it is here, badger polka, I guess. Yeah. This is a different one, but I've downloaded both of those Flash files. I'll show you guys one right now as a demo. Or will I? I don't have it actually right now. Darn it. I have to download it. Let me download it here because I had it in the files. Here it is here, badger SWF. Oh, darn it. I didn't mean to switch from the commit. Let me download these files that I need to download. This one, I need the icon that I've made. So for the icon, I've just extracted the icon that they had. This one here. So I made my own icons. I've had a video where I went through the process of how I make these icons. It is somewhat detailed. Like I take the time to do the minimal amount of an icon possible. So they're all pretty small. I'm pretty happy with the result. So we've downloaded the files here. I'm gonna need those. And we're gonna use the other two files here, the JS file and the WASM we're gonna use from that nightly downloads that I just did. Otherwise, that's those. So let's move back to the top of the code here. So let me just show you a demo here of what one of them looks like. So I'll open a file and I'll open up that Badger download that I just got. And I don't know what my volume is like. It's not muted. There we go. So that's the Flash player. It's like badger, 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 badger. Mushroom, mushroom. I don't have any audio right now, but that's one of them. And another cool example here that this one's not interactive, but let's say this one here, this Windows RG. This is one of those Windows parodies, and it's almost like an operating system like that someone made up, which is kind of my thing as well. So I'm really excited to be able to put that in there as an app. So you see here, people have this like silly OS, and it's like, it's fake, but this is using Flash, and it does all these fun, silly things. So it's kind of cool. So I looked through Ruffle's documentation. If you go to their, what is it, usage, our documentation for JavaScript, they kind of explain how to set it up. It's not super complicated. Basically, you just load the script here that they give you. And then once it's loaded, it'll be part of window as Ruffle Player. You grab Ruffle Player, you make a load event for it. Or no, this is not it. This is when you want to load it. So ignore this line here. So then when you want to load it, you get the Ruffle player, you make a new player, you get a container, you put the player there, and then you pass it a file, and that's it. And there's some options you can pass in, like allow script access, and there's a bunch of different options here, and I've kind of done them all, and I've done the work here. Here's some configure stuff here. So we're going to go through it and see what I've done here. So let's do it. And I'm going to do a little bit I'm going to do a little bit copy paste and a little bit with everybody here. First thing we'll do is making the folder. So we're going to make a new app called Ruffle. And in there, I'm going to make the styled component first, just because I have it here, styled Ruffle. And it's extremely simple right now. Maybe too simple. Did I add to this later on? I'm not sure if I ever improve upon this. I think I do. Did I? Default, I want to see if I improved. Yeah, if I improved on Ruffle, I don't think I want to waste time giving you guys the bad version. Maybe I didn't improve on it though, honestly. Looking at it here, it doesn't look like I did too much. Okay, there are some improvements. Oh, there's actually a ton of changes I do to Ruffle, so it's going to be one of those things where we're going to add it and then we're going to do a few adjustments along the way, possibly. I don't really like that idea. I'm just trying to open up all the little Ruffle instances I had so we can kind of go through them, because I don't want to waste time. I know you guys are busy. We're all busy here. So here we go. So here's the styled Ruffle that I've actually done in the long run. So let's just go right to that one. Oops. Just paste this piece. There we go. So this is what I ended up deciding on for the Ruffle thing to get the height and everything right. So what I ended up needing to do was say height 100%, but to, why do I need important here? Okay, if I do, I do. Yeah, I needed to set the height. I feel like this important doesn't need to be here, but it was a bit of a fight with Ruffle Player because it made all these pseudo elements, including this one called Ruffle Player, which is like a fake element where I had to set the height and width. But I think I managed it in the end, and this was part of the trick, part of the puzzle. Oh, let's not, right? Let's just do this step by step because I'm going to overwhelm myself again with changes that are going to be. This is the initial part. Let's just do the initial part, right? So at the end of this episode, we'll have a fully working Ruffle player, but we're gonna have to take it step by step because I don't want to get you guys lost, and by you guys I mean myself, honestly. So there's our styled Ruffle. It's just an empty div for now. It's gonna have some resizing issues, but let's just get to the point where it boots, right? Having the player is like step one. So there's these 53 lines right here. Let's analyze the heck out of these things and figure out what I've written here. Let's just go right to the file. So most of this stuff is all the stuff that's existing, but these types are not. So we'll get to those in a second. Actually, let's just get the files first before we analyze it because there's not too much more to change. I want to try to make sense of this together. So this part's easy enough to make sense of. Ignore the imports. Who cares what's imported? What does it do? I've defined the libs. So the libs is that one nightly file. Let's do that first. Let's make the libs folder. We make a Ruffle folder in here, and I'm gonna copy in that stuff from the nightly zip file that we were given. So you see here, I got that nightly Ruffle file in there. I'm just gonna extract the zip file directly to the folder, and I think it's just those. Oh, it's a couple files. Let's get rid of the ones we don't need. So if we look at them here, there's a few. So we don't need most of this. I mean, maybe we can keep this license stuff if it's necessary, but we're gonna link back to the Ruffle people in the end, one day when we finally finish this thing. So I'm gonna rename this gibberish sounding one to be Ruffle, and then I'm gonna go into the JS file. I'm gonna do it behind the scenes because if I open it in VS Code, it goes nuts, usually. Because there's minimized files plus bracket colorizing is just a mess. So I'm going into the JS file and I'm deleting the source map entry because I don't care about the source map reference, and I'm renaming their gibberish file to just be ruffle.wasm. Those are the two changes I did. So here's the two files right here now. We have our ruffle.js and our ruffle.wasm. The wasm file is kind of big. It's 5 megabytes. So, but it's not like that loads on load. It's only when somebody wants to use the Flash player. So we're going to update these build files in a second here with the lib. Here's the shortcut for it, which basically just points to the icon file, and the base URL will be the Ruffle app, which we're going to make an entry for here. But let's just quickly make the shortcut. So I think I'd made it on the desktop, and then I moved it eventually in the end to the start menu. I'm just going to put it in the start menu first this time. That's a minor change. Ruffle.url. And in here, we'll paste the shortcut code, which is very simple. We'll paste those icons in a second that we downloaded. And now we'll do the Ruffle entry here, which is going to be in the process directory. We'll name it right above here alphabetically. So the Ruffle player auto resizing. I think this might change down the road. I learned later on in my Ruffle tweaking that Flash player SWF files have a default size that I can kind of count on. And at that point, I've actually made a concept called default size that a process can have. We'll get there. For now, let's just say it auto resizes, even though it doesn't work perfectly. The background color black, that's good for now. This is pretty much boilerplate, just like this. I've called it Ruffle here because that's what they call it on their website. And then the icon, that's it. So I'm just looking to see, I did this, did that, did the shortcut. All right, yes, this piece here as well. So we need to associate the files. That's in a file called extensions here. And we need to say that SWF files will open with Ruffle, and they have an unknown icon for now. And we're gonna do some new logic for these unknown icons in the future as well, in this episode. And then the types is the only other piece. So I did a little bit of custom types just to kind of grease the wheels of it working. And we're gonna paste that in there as well. And now we have all the pieces. So this should be the initial app. Now let's just, before we even, let's close this for a second and see if it stops complaining, because I have that there. There we go. So before, I'm gonna reload this. Oh wait, we need to do the build of the, two more things we need to do. We need to copy the pictures. 2 or 3 more things. One second here. Do I have a Flash file that I default to? No. So we need to copy our Flash files as well. So let's go back to the public folder, and we're going to make a new folder called Flash. And in the Flash folder is where we're going to put those two Flash examples we had, the Windows one and the Badger one. And then in my icons, I'm going to copy the ruffle icon to the right place, like so. So if we see here in icons here, I've added ruffle there, and I've added the ruffle one here that match the icons. And where did I get them? I got them from like here, like the favicon. And I think actually I downloaded the Windows version, and then I extracted the icon as a .ico file. And then from there, I got it. So in the libs, I've got the ruffle stuff, I've got the icons, I've got the Badger and the Windows Flash files, and I've got the shortcut in Start. Let's do a build fs to get the latest fs files. And now let's test it out in the browser and see if it works. So in the Start menu, we should now have the ruffle app. There we go, it loads like an app. If I close it here and I go to the Flash folder, and like so, and I open up the Badger one, double click, there we go, Badger, Badger, Badger. So now we have a Flash player in our OS. And I can open this one, and it's like a Windows thing. And you'll see here, it might be cut off. Let's see if it's messed up. Yeah, you see the Start menu is messed up. So the sizing, I didn't have right at this point. But we're going to commit it with wrong sizing for now, and just go through the steps of fixing it. But otherwise, it's pretty cool. That's a pretty good start. But by the end, it's going to be basically identical to this version here. It's actually funny, like the Windows version that you run on Windows looks almost exactly like this. Even in the way that the naming is, the way the icon is, the way that I'm going to have the functionality for resize and stuff. So we just got to get there. So that's ruffle. It's pretty cool. Now let's go into the code, and I'll show you guys what I did to get it working. And it's very similar to that example. If you remember, we just looked at the example here on their web page. So you'll see here, this is the ruffle component. This is just my hook to update the file title once the file loads. This is to get the URL of what file was picked. This is for updating the window size. That's the generic hook, but we need to fix the logic here for updating in a minute. This is the file system to read the file. This is where we keep track of the ruffle player. And that's one of the types that I made. We'll get into that in a second. It's just a place to put it once it loads. And this is to keep a track of our container so that we know where the element is, to have a ref to it. So there's two effects that I have. The first effect is my load files function that we've already used in the past to load whatever the libraries are. In this case, it's just that one file. This JS file is kind of like a loader for the WebAssembly file. So it loads that, and then once it's loaded, it just sets the player to be the Windows ruffle, the newest instance.createPlayer. And that was pretty much what was going on here. Yeah, here it's like newest and then create player, and then it was passing that along. I'm just kind of shortcutting all that and putting this all in one line and saying player will be that player that I want. And then once player changes, I have another effect. So then once we have a file system and now we have a player, okay, append the player to the container and now read the file. And if there's no errors, then then the player will do the load, which is that command we already saw. And here we just pass in the buffer URL. And we're going to change this too, because I've learned that we can just pass the buffer directly. So in the next steps, we'll fix that. So then once it loads, here's where I attempted to do proper resizing. What I was doing is I was looking at the canvas and trying to match the size based on that, with the assumption that the canvas knew the size. But there's an issue with that, where like if you make a smaller window, then the next time you open it, the canvas becomes smaller. And it's like diminishing returns where it was shrinking every time slightly. So this is not a long-term solution, and I have a better solution that we'll get to in a minute. And then I just update the title, just like I do with File Explorer. Once it's loaded, I change the title. Same with the Linux, same with the v86, x86 emulator. Anyways, so it's pretty simple. This is pretty much just those commands that we're already running. And if we look at the types here, the ruffle player just has that load function, which return a promise. The wording that I got for things like the source API, public API, that was me actually looking through Ruffle's code because they didn't have very good types, actually. They have some, but it's not easy to access them that I could find. I couldn't find an easy way to access them at the moment, but we'll see. Maybe I fixed that too. I'm not sure. I don't remember how many more things I did with Ruffle. I need to check the commits. But this is pretty bare bones. It's just those functions that already it said it had. It had load, create player, and newest. And it has the window has Ruffle player. So that's it. Let's commit that as the first basic one, and then let's improve upon it. So created basic Ruffle Flash app. Not an app made with Flash, but an app for playing Flash within a fake operating system. So we're not going to review these changes again because we just did. I feel like I don't want to get too repetitive with all this stuff, you know. So how many times can I say so in this episode? Who's to say? This one's down. Next one up is updated icons. What? Oh man, I already changed the icons. If I'd known that, I would have just copied the correct ones the first time. I think what happened is I copied the favicon one, and then I decided I actually wanted the .ico one that came right from the Windows app, because I was thinking, let's just get as close to the Windows app as possible. So I think that is why I did that. And now I'm going to update the icons. There's the 16 pixel one. And then here is the 48 by 48. Those are the two basic size formats that I use for my icons currently. There's a chance that I might get another one day, and I might want to streamline the icon making process. There we go. So I updated the icons. Updated Ruffle icons. How many commits can I do that are just changes to the thing I just did? I guess it still shows you the guys the progress, so in that way it's kind of interesting. Improved, yeah, here's more changes. So I improved the type. So it looks like I stopped doing the buffer to URL because I learned that you can do, in the options, you can pass data here. And you could just pass the blob of data. I also did the allow script access false. I think in another commit I actually removed this because I figured out this was the default. But just stick with me for a minute. This didn't change, looks like. This is still the same. I've also added this player.remove piece because the player has the ability to destroy after, which is kind of cleanup. So I already had an effect for player, so now I just have a cleanup part for it. And I also did this polyfill false. This was a legitimate change because polyfill by default is true. So when the script loads, it looks through the DOM elements to try to find old Flash and update it and to polyfill it. I don't want that. That's not the purpose of this app. So that's a good default config. And then I just tweaked the types a bit to fit that information. So the data was this iterable number, which can also equivalent to a buffer, I guess, whatever. The polyfill is a Boolean, the script is a Boolean. These are simple changes, but I just explained them, so I'm gonna copy them verbatim. Verbati. Let's jump over to the code here. I'll just paste them in because that's easier for me. If I had to type out all the changes that I did, I think it would be a boring show because then it would just be monotonous. I mean, hopefully it's not monotonous still. I hope that's not the case. There we go. So, did the change as discussed. Yeah, here the PR looks a lot more simple. In GitHub, it looked a little rough. I just added that polyfill false. I switched from using the buffer URL, which requires cleaning up that I wasn't doing, to just doing this, which I hope it's doing cleaning up by itself, and also doing more cleaning up here by doing remove. And I updated the types to reflect those functions that I knew existed. So, without further ado, improve types and use data buffer. Okay, for Ruffle. I gotta keep specifying. This is for Ruffle. I'm back, hopefully, guys. Hopefully you see me again when the stream kicks back in. Unfortunately, my OBS froze on me. Seems to happen once every stream. I don't know what it is, but it's going to mess up all my browsers that I was sharing. Here we go. Now, I'm not 100% sure where I disappeared for you guys, so it's hard to say. keep you guys caught up, but I think I had just done the improved types thing. I think that's where I saw that it froze on my OBS. So thanks for staying with me. Sorry that I disappeared on you guys, but I'm back now in full color. And I was just moving on to the next change because I just committed the improved types piece. And the next one was this extract to hook. Looks like I pretty much took all the code and just changed it to this use ruffle function to clean it up a lot. Looking at it here, this is exactly what I did. So I'm just gonna copy it again. This is a good change. I like to be able to extract these out. It simplifies it to the extreme. If you look here, so all this code and now it's like this. It's pretty much just an empty app where it's the app, it makes a container and then it passes it here. Pretty similar to how the desktop is, but I like that it's separated out those lines at least. Like how much is this? This is like 14 lines. Those are 14 lines that did not need to exist in the logic of making ruffle work. So for that reason alone, I like to extract these things to hooks because now you know the use ruffle hook is about how to make ruffle work basically. And there's nothing in here about how to make a component and display it and to run a hook. It's just talking about the ruffle stuff. So I'd like to do that whenever possible. Extract ruffle to hook. Ruffle loading. There we go. Need a little more Red Bull after that one. It's good. Unfortunately, it's not cold anymore. Could use some ice. So what's the next thing I undid? So I made this a little more simple, I guess. I was doing player shadow root query. Oh, right. Okay. I think this was more accurate. I think doing get bounding client rect was actually less accurate than just reading the width and height from the canvas, which Ruffle was manually setting. I think that was one of my main discoveries. So let's do that one first. Makes the code a tiny bit more simple too. Player. So fix resizing ruffle. Yeah, don't use rect. You wrecked yourself. Get wrecked. Okay. What next on the changing ruffle front? Oh, that was it for that day. So that was a bunch of little ruffle changes, and then I got right back to it the next day. I think I improved it a lot the next day, actually. Yeah, here's where I started setting some more stuff. What did I do? I got rid of all of that shadow root logic. Didn't need any of it. Yeah, here's where I was trying to manually set the size and update it here, but I didn't need any of that. This could all have just been done in CSS if I said stick to the container, and then I said to the container stick to the window, and then I said to the top of the window account for the title bar. So those are the three pieces I had to do. But there's another piece. Oh, right. So the reason I was doing this was for the initial width, because our typical default for a window is like 250 by 250, I think. But the Flash players had a default, like if we look here, SWF default size. Flash default size. Flash default size. Here we go. 550 by 400. So this is a known format. And Ruffle was following that. So I decided to start using that explicitly instead of reading it here, because it was what I expect. So a new Ruffle window, when you open it the first time, should just be that size. And then every other time it should be whatever the saved size is. And the resizing should happen here and should be dynamic. That's part 2. And that's where this default size comes in. We'll talk about this in just 1 second here. So here's where I was saying the 550 by 440. So let's do that part first. So within the app directory for the Ruffle app, I've said don't auto resize, but now we have this concept called a default size for a component. Currently we don't have that concept, but we're about to. And we'll go into the process types now and we'll define that. We'll just say here that a default size can occur and it's type of size. And size exists. And if I autosave, it'll fix that. There we go. So now we've clarified the default size is a thing. Now we'll go into the use resizable here. And we're not going to use default window size anymore. Instead, we're going to use that hook that we're gonna make. We're gonna make a hook for default size called use default size. And it's gonna be up here. Right, like that. It's gonna be, sorry, like this here. So the default size goes use default size, and then that will be what gets passed in here. Yes. So within the default size hook, we're going to use the logic of this window default size as a fallback, but we're going to check the process to see if it has its own default size. And we're just going to put that hook right in the R&D window, because that's where it's going to be used for now, I believe. And this is what default size is. So let's look at it. So we pass in an ID, and then it looks in the process directory. Or sorry, it looks at the process to see if the process itself had a default size, which it extracts out here. And it also gets the title bar height for its calculation. So when we specify default size, we don't want to have to specify the title bar height. And then here's where it sets it here, yeah. So if there is a default size, it goes height is the height of the title bar plus the height of the default size. And because size type can be a string, I have to specify that it's a number in this case because I want to do math on it. And width we just pass straight through. But if there is no default size, then we just use that default window size that we were already using. So that's the gist of that. Now let's do that ruffle fix where we no longer need those changes. Where was that? Here in the ruffle app under use ruffle. So yeah, we don't need to set the size here anymore. We don't need an unload. We just update the title instead of doing all this size stuff. That's all there was to that change. And I wanted to specify in the styled ruffle some dynamism, where this pseudo fake element, the ruffle player, will have this height set all the time, which it gets inherited in the canvas, and then the container element will be like this. I think that was it. I think we have a properly resizing ruffle. Let's test it out now and see if it works a lot better than before. So I'm going to clear whatever the height, whatever the sizes were for it. Start fresh. So open up here and open up the Badger one, and you'll see the Badger one opens quite nicely. And now if we close that one and open the window one should have the proper start menu, the taskbar this time, and not be resized wrong. There we go. So yeah, now the sizing's perfect, and I can maximize. I can just do my own custom sizing to it. So that's kind of cool. So now it's like another OS. So we have a fake Flash OS. We can have a real Linux OS. We can have a DOS OS at the same time. So we have DOS running, we have Linux running, and we have the Ruffle Flash player running a fake Windows OS. And it's running all of them reasonably fast. I have a pretty quick computer, but not that quick. So there we go, default sizes and flex for Ruffle. Much more dynamic. But we're not done yet with Ruffle. I think we got even more changes probably coming down the pipeline. So let's just review, make sure it's all fine. I like that we have this default size concept now, because now I could do other default sizes in apps rather than just the generic window one. Currently I don't want to, but I might change a few of them in the future actually. Default sizes for apps and flex Ruffle. Nice. And that was the first one there. So I think we do an icon thing now. What do we do here? Ah, yes. So this is another cool one I wanted to do, is when the icon is not known, currently in this case with the Flash icon, I don't have a file Flash icon. But I noticed with Windows, if you go to open up something that's unknown and you say, always open in this executable, then the file extensions, or then the files that are open in that one get its icon. So that's what I wanted to do here with what I've done. And at the same time, I've also added, there's actually another type of file called SPL that Ruffle supports. I found that out randomly, and I've decided to add it this episode, or this piece. Actually, let's do that first. So let's say SWF, and there's also SPL. I currently don't have a way to do multiples here, even though this is a bit repetitive, but that's okay. So let's just do that as another commit. Added SPL to Ruffle supported Ruffle types, file types. Add that to our massive show notes here. And now let's stop having these unknown icons. So in the case with where you, I mean, we still want to show an unknown icon if we have nothing that can play it, can run the file. But in the case of SPL and SWF, we know Ruffle can run it. So we're going to say, you know what, icon can be optional in those cases. And I want you to use the Ruffle icon for SWFs and SPLs. And to do that, we need a little more logic here. We basically just need something here within the file entry functions, which are right here for the get, where is it here? Get icon by file extension. Yeah. So I've changed the logic a bit. Instead of just being a string, I had to make it a little more dynamic than just returning a string. Now what it does, what does it do? It checks the process directory, and we need to import that. So what is it actually doing here? So we have the extension. It goes into the extensions list for that extension and tries to get out this information, which is the icon and the process. Right. So that's these two pieces here it tries to get. And for the process, it just gets the first one, which is calling default process, assuming there are processes for it. And for the icon, it just gets the extension icon. Now, if there's an extension icon, just use it. Return that extension icon. But if there's not, then we go here, and it's going to look in the process directory to try to find that icon based on this default process. Now, if it doesn't find that, then it's going to fall back to the unknown icon. So that's the way I've decided to add that. So now when we go here, there we go. So now those ones, because they can be run in Ruffle, now they have an icon. And now when you double click them, they open properly as you'd expect. I mean, they open properly as you'd expect before the icon changed, but I didn't break anything, you know, that's what I'm saying. And it's another cool feature. So now anytime, like let's say for this web amp music, I have a music file type that I use, but if I didn't have this, it would just, MP3s would then use the web amp icon, which is cool. So this is a file behavior. Default icon from process. Yeah, another default behavior, just like the default size. Now we can do default icon. So far, Copilot hasn't helped very much, but it's because I've been doing so much copy paste and not really original code, but it is original. We're discussing it. So we just did that one. Improve Ruffle visuals. How many changes to Ruffle have I done? Okay. So here's where I added a few more tweaks. Oh, right. So another issue was, I'll show you guys. So with the Badger one here, watch. If I open up the Badger one and then I go like this, watch this. You see the tree goes above it there? So that's something where I think the Flash file was made in a little bit of a weird way, but there's a concept called letterbox that they use. And their default one was using that, and I wasn't. And also this white here was another piece that I need to set in their Ruffle settings because it's like part of the Ruffle canvas. So it's another piece that I wasn't doing that we should do. Let's just go into the use Ruffle hook. Oops. Let's just type some gibberish. How about that? We go to the config. Where is it? Here it is. So I had just polyfills off, but now I want background color also to be black and the letterbox to be on. Now, the reason I use black with 6 zeros instead of 3 is because it actually needs to be 6. It specifies this in the rule instructions, and if you do just 3, which it should work as a shorthand, it does not. So. And at the same time, I've also decided that this command was default already false. So we're just going to switch it to be just the data, which makes it a little smaller. Now it's complaining here because I have to update the type. So let's just update the type for the config. to also support, in the base load options, it also supports a background color and the letterbox of on, off, and full screen. Now, I don't like specifying types when possible, but I don't know if for Ruffle I can import them. We can add that as a note for the next stream. Can I use Ruffle types? Watch me use Ruffle types already in like one of my future commits here. Who knows? So that should have improved it. Let's take a peek. So now if we go back to the Badger and we open it again, there we go. You see? Now it's all black, and watch, we'll see the tree doesn't jump past its, yeah, see? Because it's in letterbox format. So that's preferable, and it still works. It works more like how the demonstration version works on their own website. Simple change. And I've really tried to make it just like the Ruffle player that runs in Windows. Whenever possible, to try to make the apps look just like the Windows versions, to try to trick people, kind of. Better with new line. What's this? Oh, that's the most minor change in the world. Okay. I don't like doing such a minor change. I'm uncomfortable doing it. Well, what new line was this? Where is this? Here? This one here. Oh, I'm not even going to do that. No. Maybe it is better in theory, but too late, hot plate. User select nothing. Right. So this is an annoying one. Watch, if I go here and I do Control A, it does selecting of stuff. I don't want that at all. There's already some places where I had user select none for the body. I'm just going to make it global. And I haven't yet found all the sprayback failure from doing this. We'll see if there's more, but for now, it's better that way. So now when it's like this, and I open up a folder and I go Control A, there we go, nothing. That's what I want. I want all selecting to be very specific. Specific. So user select nothing. I will tell you when you can select. I feel like there's so many things we haven't yet done. That's what's crazy. Is that the case? Here's where we are now. Yeah, kind of, that is the case. Same transition duration for taskbar animations. What the heck's that mean? Oh yeah, this is a subtle change. I just noticed that I had different transitions for, what is this? For the taskbar entry, when you select the window, there's this up animation versus when the taskbar entry, when you hover over it, there's this little boop, boop. And I had those as different numbers because I perceived them slightly different, but I kind of disagree with my own perception there now. And at the same time, it was just a little, it made the code look a little more complex. This to me looks a little more weird than splitting these out into two specific things. So the duration is just 0.1 seconds. And if the property is, if it's foreground, all the effects, if it's not, just width. Basically the same exact thing, except instead of the 0.2 seconds, it's both 0.1. And I've also split it out into those two selectors, which I like to do that too when possible. Once they're two of the same numbers. I mean, had they both been 0.1, then I could have just done one change, but now it was like two changes. Does not matter. Luckily, some of these are small changes. We're burning through these. So what's this one here? Improve window focus blur on inner elements. Oh, okay. I think this is another bug, right? So watch, if you see here how the element's focused and I click an icon. Yeah, you see that flicker when I switch between icons. It's actually messing with the focus. So here I think I fixed it, and at the same time I refactored it to be a little more legible, which I'm also trying to do all the time anyways. Let's take a look at how I made it more legible. If I made it more legible, that's debatable. Let's debate it together. So before it was just saying if related target doesn't equal taskbar entry. So I've changed that to be the opposite of that, and then done a not version here. So first I try to see if things do exist, and then I try to check if they didn't occur, I guess. Does that make sense? So when you click off of the window, a blur event occurs. And in that case, if it's not focused on the taskbar and it's not focused on the inside window and it's not the foreground, then I want you to blur and clear. Otherwise not. Yeah, that makes sense. So basically there was two issues here actually. So this part was partially wrong in that this was a condition, but then I was running this regardless. That wasn't right. Both of this should be connected. So I've wrapped them together here, and then I've also expanded on the condition slightly in that I've added this condition, focused on inside window. So I say there is a related target, and the related target is within the component window. So if that's not true, then clear. So that should have fixed it. Let's take a peek. So now when we click, there we go. So you see now when I'm clicking icons, it's not flickering the foreground, but if I click out, it's gone. Click back in, there we go, it's back, on, back. So that's fixing a little bit of focusing there. That was kind of flickering when we didn't need it to. And also naming the variables a little better. Before it was just saying related target doesn't equal taskbar entry. Now it's focused on taskbar entry, and we use a not here. So not focused on taskbar entry. Okay. So no one would read that. No one would be like, focused on taskbar entry. What does that focus on? You know? Be like, be quiet. Improve window focus blur. Yeah, all right. I wouldn't really say be quiet because that's dismissive, but I'd be frustrated at your lack of thought. But I'm not the dismissive type. Now I prefer you don't say anything else about it. It's a joke too. Use async await for parse track. Right. I think I like using async await in cases where it can make sense, and I think this was the only case where it made sense. In some cases, I'm still using promise because I've had to work around functions that use callbacks versus functions that don't, and I don't want to do like promisify or something. So, but in this case, I switched to async await. So that meant I no longer needed to define this type because it could be inferred when it's awaited. Yeah. So before it was like, make a new promise, parse the track, then go into it and resolve the promise. Whereas now I just say, here's an asynchronous function, await parsing the track, and then give me the data, extract it right away, and then just return it straight without any callbacks. So from a legibility point of view, this is a lot more readable, I think. Because if you get rid of this async and you get rid of this await, you almost don't even need to know that that's a concurrent event or an asynchronous event, sorry. That's when it's best. That's when I really like this syntax sugar, because it's not just syntax sugar. It allows you to forget about this asynchronous style. Because if you remove that, it could just be a normal non-async function. So use async await for parse track. And if I find another reason to use it, I will. But I only want to use it when it makes sense to use it. v86 updated lib. Do I want to do that again? I think there was a reason why I used this one. I think before I had been downloading it directly from his website, but then I saw in a comment that he actually does releases, auto releases, and that I should just use those. And that was a heck of a good suggestion. I just need to find where it is. Where are the releases? How do releases work? Here they are, right there. I'm blind. Right. So this pre-release 3 days ago, yeah. So I like this method of getting them here versus what I was doing before, which was like extracting them from a really messy way. I don't know what this fallback's for. I don't know. Just the libv86 and the wasm file changed. I'm going to paste those in the background here. I'll switch over to the code so you guys can see when I change it. But I'm going into my Windows publics libs folder, and I'm just overwriting those two files. I'm just going to quickly take a look at libv86 to make sure there's no source map junk in there. There's not. Good. So if we see here, it says it's changed now because I just updated those in the background secretly. Didn't have to be a secret. I was just too lazy to share my screen with you guys. I'm not lazy. I prefer to share specific windows and organize it. but sometimes I do like to be able to share the screen, but my screen's kind of really ultra widely big and hard to share properly. Explicit transform origin. What is this about? I think this was a styled v86 thing where I saw that they've set this, and I didn't know why they set it, you know? I'm waiting for the edge case where it turns out I needed this. I'm not going to add this though. I think I added it just to see if it made a difference, and then it didn't, but I kept it. Let's not this time though. Let's not just add random stuff. Okay, here's a nice little one to clean things up. So I've completely removed the loading of styles. And I think this should go asynchronously with the JS DOS removal, yeah. So first thing I decided, the JS DOS CSS file was doing almost nothing. It was a waste of space. So, and it also meant I had to have extra code for dynamically loading CSS, even though I was only using it in this one case. So I think it was kind of pointless. I'm gonna get rid of it. Libs, JS DOS, here's the CSS. So now my libs are just JavaScript files, which is much cleaner, much more sensible to me. And the only other piece I noticed was that in the JS DOS container, it makes a video element. I was hiding the div elements that were like mouse control stuff, but there's also this video element. It doesn't seem to do anything, but I'm gonna hide it as well because it just doesn't need to even ever have a chance to be visualized. So let's start there. Don't need JS DOS CSS file. That's a nice clean one because that, yeah, what a waste of time that was. It was crazy when I look at what I was doing there. How many more of those things are there in the code, you know, where it's like, I'm just making a huge mistake and I don't know yet. So now that we don't have any CSS files, we're going to stop doing the load style and we're going to simplify this promise about 100 times. So let's go to load style here and basically just get rid of it. So load files was this big complicated thing, and we're just going to turn it into this. So now we know they're all scripts. So we don't need to make this array. We don't need to check the extensions. We just say, rather than all of that, just do this. You got files? Okay, let's load them. They're scripts. And then we don't need any of this. And we don't need the extension name. There we go. So that's a lot cleaner. So now we just load the script and we just have that generic load files. And hopefully we'll never need these again. I don't like this practice of loading CSS dynamically and injecting it in, so I'm hoping we can avoid it. Never load styles dynamically. Or maybe I should say programmatically, because I was doing it via programming. Are you using programming? Okay. We're almost at the end of these. What are we at? 2 hours. Oh, I feel like every hour is when I look at the clock. I have an internal timer. Fixed rename. What needs renaming? Oh, right. Rename was just legit broken. Let's just demonstrate that it's broken. So here's something here. Rename. Yeah, I can't type anything. Why is that? I think it's because of this on key down thing. Oh, this might have been related. If you guys remember, I switched this from key down to key up at one point, I think. Or it was key up. I think it's a mixture of having, it was key up to try to fix a problem that it didn't fix. I put it to key down and it fixed that problem, but then it caused this problem of rename. So what I've done here now is for the button, the logic that I've added, let's go to the button here. The button is a generic event and it's, is a generic component. And it's how the file entry works. And on key down, when I was typing, it was going prevent default right away. But what we need to do is check the target, and we need to see is the thing that you're typing on an input element, and if it is an input element, then don't do prevent. So that's basically what I do is I just check that the target element is not an input element. If it is an input element, then I want you to be able to type. And let's see if that made a difference. Now when I go rename, I can type. Cool. And it doesn't break the other thing where I maximize and then I press enter. There, now it's not unmaximizing. So, oh man, how many times have I said so? I keep hearing it now, but I can't stop it. Fixed renaming not typing, just to try to detail a bit what was wrong. Every commit could just be fixed almost. I mean, the ones where stuff's broken at least. Update FS without CSS. What's that mean? Oh, this is just a build FS command. I won't do this right now. I'll skip this. I can do it later. Cleaner logic. That sounds nice. Oh, this is another one where I've refactored the wording. Did I change anything else besides the wording? This comes from this. So yeah, before here it was just a bunch of like elements and comparing them, and you're like, what does it all mean? But now I've made it much nicer. I say, so when maybe close menu goes, we go, we check a clicked element. Okay, so that the related target is supposed to be the element that was clicked. And then we do, was it clicked inside the menu? To do that, we check if the menu contained the click element. Okay. If it didn't click inside the menu, then we say, okay, did it click the taskbar? What does that mean? That means if the clicked element is the next sibling. Okay. What if it clicked the start button? That means if the parent element equals the next sibling. So this was where I was trying to do two cases here very sloppily in a confusing way. And I didn't even know what this meant. Now it's very clear. I'm comparing these three things. Was it inside the menu? Was it inside the taskbar? Was it inside the start button? Because in those different cases, it acts differently. So if you didn't click inside the taskbar and you didn't click inside the start button, then we can toggle off. Then we can hide the menu. In general, this is how I should be coding all of the ones that I do, with this very explicit naming, especially because I'm a big proponent of no comments. I mean, within reason. I keep saying within reason, but I haven't found the reasonable use for comments, honestly. I think the thing is that you need some commenting system, and my commenting system is the variable naming. I think that's the thing. So you need some system. My system is just long named variables, But this is where you use them, And this is inline commenting. If I decide not to use this anymore, I don't have to update a comment to say, oh, in this case, this happens. No, if I get rid of this, then when you're reading the code, you're not going to see this. You're never going to know about that. So that's another reason I like that. Same, and that's where types come in too. Types is like a form of commenting. So, cleaner logic for start menu, click, compare. Listen, I guess that's what it's doing. The amount of refactors I've done are nuts here. If we could get all the ruffle stuff out of here, I'd make it into its own little note. To say like apps. I got a message here from Stefan Wixfort saying morning. Hey, Stefan. It's evening for me. It's 11 p.m. for me, but morning none the same. All the same. So I'm going to say apps here, and I'm just going to make a little ruffle note here. Just because it's worth mentioning that wasn't a refactor. At some point, this was an app I made. Ruffle, 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 ruffle. And ruffle. There we go. Those are all ruffle specific things, and we'll put them above there. And we'll just call this ruffle. And this should actually be 2 spaces, not 4. Nice. Okay, I cleaned that up a little bit. I like to have an apps section. On to the next one. Wait, did I commit my last one? Yeah, I did. It was the cleaner logic for the click comparison. We're slowly getting near the end here, but I have a few animations near the end that I'd like to show you guys that are kind of neat. Fixed focusing on peak close. Oh, nice. This is a nice one. So if we hover over here, if you hover and I go to press close, watch, hover, and then I go to the close and I click. Oh, that's a bad example. If it's focused, now if I hover and I go click, you see it didn't work. Now if I click, it does. That's because the first click was considered stealing focus from the window, and I needed some extra logic to kind of clean that up. And that's a third one I did, yet another one I did where I've kind of cleaned it up again and made it more clear. Actually, this is an add-on to the one I did a few commits ago, I think. Yeah, where I had focused on taskbar, and I've added another one here called focused on taskbar peak, where when you click within the peak window, that's part of the taskbar entry. So the way that I compared it was look for its previous sibling of the taskbar entry, because I happen to know that's like internal knowledge that I know it's the previous sibling is where it's physically located. But because that's internal knowledge, that's why I wanted to make it this comment. or make it that variable name so it's very clear. Got a message here from Stefan again. Yeah, it's 8 a.m. over here in Germany. Are you satisfied with your progress overall so far? That's an interesting question. Interesting question. Whenever I hear someone ask a question, it's always like, why did you ask that question? You know? I think I am satisfied with it. Yeah, I think I'm still on track for finishing most of that. But I am starting to sometimes feel like it's going to take a bit longer than, like, it won't be done on my birthday. It won't be done after 1 year. I mean, it is a lifetime project, I feel, so I'm not worried about that. But I'm not sure when my MVP release date, where I start posting it to everybody and showing them, look what I've done, you know? I'm not sure if I'm on track for that. It's hard to say. But I'm pretty happy with the progress. I mean, it's coming along. It's doing a lot of fun stuff. Let me reset the cache here and just play with it for 12 seconds. Yeah, I think it's starting to come together, you know, especially like I got a few animations we'll do today that are kind of neat, and it feels like it's coming together, honestly. Still not there yet though, you know, there's still a lot to do. But thanks for the feedback. I'd love to know where'd that question come from? Are you satisfied with the progress? Are you unsatisfied with my progress? Or yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Just while I'm waiting for that answer, or if maybe it'll never come, we'll never know. But let's move on to the coding part for this next one here. So I fixed the focus to allow closing. The trick for allowing it was just kind of, again, tweaking these blur events to be very specific, to say I'll allow blur, but not in this case, in this case, in this case, kind of thing. Where am I looking for? I'm looking for the start menu -index. There it is. Couldn't find the darn thing. Oh, I had it open. Jeez. So then I changed this file. Let's see what I actually changed here. So this one's mostly just wording, honestly, now that I look at it. I changed it from being clicked to the word focused, because that actually is more accurate. This is about focusing here, not about what was clicked. If you guys remember, I was just specifying earlier that it wasn't that. So this part here is nothing. I did nothing there. But in the use focusable hook, I changed something. I think I made the wording consistent because they were both essentially blur events, which happened from something else being focused. So rather than saying click, I want to say focus. I got a thumbs up from Stefan, so I have no idea if he's happy with my progress. I'm hoping that means he's happy with it. But if you're unhappy with my progress, I'd love to hear feedback and suggestions as to how I could improve my progress. I could work on it more, I guess. Okay, so here's the other pieces I've got here. So focused element, I've added a bunch of stuff here. I've kind of made this one like the other one was, I see now. So the other one here, I already had this clicked element, which I've named focused element. And now I've done the same here in use focusable. So the related target, I've split out into this focused element. And then I've made a few more rules. Instead of just the focus on taskbar entry, I've added the peak one, where it has this other logic. I didn't change this. Yeah, I didn't change very much, honestly. Just adding this focused element instead of related target, and then adding that one additional rule of if you click inside the peak bar, that's okay. I think those are the like I could make exceptions all day, but I think these are the three main exceptions. So that's why I decided to just focus on those three, and I haven't made some more blanket exception rule. I think this does kind of cover them. So let's test that out and make sure it works before we commit it. So now when I open the window here, it's focused, but if I hover and I go close, it closes. So that's what I wanted to do. We'll paste this, fixed focusing on peak. I'm gonna save that note, commit it, and then I'm gonna read Stefan's response here. Well, it's a huge project, so I was just curious. It's something I do need to check every now and then when I'm doing a biggish project. Yeah, definitely. If you see all my post-it notes here, I mean, that's been a big thing with me, and I've gone through every post-it note and I've actually time estimated them all and then added them all together. Last time I added them, it was about 155 hours of work I have left. I've got about 138 days left to do it with my timeline of trying to release it on my birthday. I work on it a couple hours in the evenings, plus a little more on the weekend sometimes. So I feel like I'm on track, but at the same time, there's so much I don't capture there, where I'm messing around, I'm adding packages, I'm finding new linting rules. I want it to be fun. I want it to be a fun project. So I'm not going to stick too much to the deadline, and I'm not going to be like, I have to do something from the board. It always has to be the board. I'm just keeping it organic, and that's why I feel it's a little hard to estimate. But you're right. You definitely have to check on these projects, and you can get off track easily. So that's why I love having this board and making and seeing visible progress every day. And I usually like to every couple of weeks make an app to make something big, you know, the context menu, the Ruffle app, that kind of thing. Another piece of message here from Stefan. I guess I'm happy with your progress, ? Though I'm not in your team, or are you PM or stuff? Yeah, that's true. You're not my project manager. I don't have one in this case. So I feel like in general with side projects, like if this were a company project, I would be nowhere near this level. If it was just like one person at a company given this project and he had to go through all the agile methods and making tests and this and that, I mean, maybe the app would be more robust, but it wouldn't be anywhere near where it is here as me just kind of working on it all the time when I have fun, you know? That's a great view on how to do it, I think. Cool. Thanks for the feedback, and thanks for the chance to think about it. Next up, move Ruffle shortcut. Right. I think I already moved this into the start menu in this case, so we don't have to move it. I didn't want it on the desktop. Not long term. Add active coloring for taskbar entry. What did I do here? Ah, yes. This is a minor one, although it looks like I changed more than I actually did. But basically here, I noticed that when you see here, if I click, it changes the color. But if I click again, if I click, nothing happens. I mean, it keeps maximizing and minimizing, so it's a bad example. But basically, is this the taskbar entry? Let me double check. Taskbar entry. Yeah. When you click something, the active piece is like the active clicking does a little flicker, you know? And that does exist on the taskbar. It also exists on the clock. So you see here, you see there's no flicker there when I'm clicking the clock up here. Oops. Oh no, I resized the menu. I resized the window a bunch more than I wanted to. There we go. Back in place. I got another message here before I get too off track. Let's see here from Soder Padu. Awesome job, man. I've been keeping a close eye on your repo and here on YouTube. Oh, cool. Much appreciated. Thank you. Glad to hear that kind of feedback and that people are interested. And yeah, I'm just going to keep plugging away at this project. You know, I feel like there's no end in sight on it, and in a good way, because I'm having fun. You know, I don't want to stop. So the active coloring will be when I click that it's just going to flicker a different change. It's same like, well, I don't have any other. Oh wait, here's a good example. So you see the start menu. When I click down on it, you see how it changed colors there. But if I click off of it, it didn't do that. So it's just like, it's a little effect that happens when you click. And I just need to change 2 files to make it happen. The taskbar entry, I've added an active effect that on the before piece, the background color changes. Because the before piece is the colored piece. And this only happens when it's active. What have I done here? What have I done? Ah, okay. So I've changed the word active to be foreground for the theme. Yeah, that was kind of confusing. I had this thing called active coloring, which was for the foreground color, which was for when the window was in foreground versus background. But now that I'm actually adding an attribute that's legitimately called active for CSS, I felt it was a little confusing. So I changed the name of the colors as well, I believe. Let's just do these 2 changes rather than think about them forever, because they're just a color. Entry? Yeah. Let's see what that looked like again, just to make sure the diff didn't make less sense than I thought it did. That's just a pure rename right there. Yeah, these are just renaming from active to foreground. This is the only real change, was that I want this piece to change its background color if it's active. And I've also added this active foreground, and I had to add 2 colors because it slightly looks different if it's not the foreground window and you click on the clicking down. I want the color to change a little bit. It'll be easier to explain this once I'm just done adding it. So I'm going to copy the colors from the colors file and add that update as well. Colors. Yeah, so we've these foreground colors were actually these active. So these got moved to be foreground, and then active and active foreground have changed to be different colors. They're all the same. They're all just different shades of the same color though, just different percentages of lightness. Let's check it out because I can't explain it anymore. So when we open up a window here, now watch, when I click, you see it changed, it went a little darker before it went in. And then if I click here, you see it goes a little darker before it minimizes. That's what wasn't happening before. That's that active effect, that visual indicator that you've clicked down. Add active coloring for taskbar entry. And also rename to, and rename var. It's too much, too much. Let's not make it too explicit. Commit that one, move on to the next. What's the next one on our list here? Fixed for renamed active. What the heck's that mean? Oh, right, I renamed it. Yeah, that's a tricky thing with when you rename these. When you rename a variable to something that it was already named, you have to make sure you catch all the cases. So I think this was the one I missed. I got them in taskbar entry, but the start button was also using the active coloring, which is now considered the foreground coloring. So that was wrong and now it's right. Fixed for renamed active coloring. Commit that change. I see a few messages have come in, so after this is saved, I'm just going to get into the right position before I forget here. So this is my next one. This is the next one we'll do. Now let's read these messages here. Got a few messages, one from Stefan here. Going to lurk mode. Yeah, no problem. Need to do some things. Enjoy your stream. Thanks. Yeah, feel free to lurk. Got another one, couple here from Soder Padu. I think you can emulate the active state from the dev tools. This way is less tricky to catch the behavior without messing with you. Yeah, totally. Good point. Yeah. So within here, if you inspect an element here, and then you can go into the effects here. Let's say for the figure, and I can say it's active. Although I think it's on the button in this case. Active. What is it? It's on the LI item? Yeah, there we go. So you can see there the coloring of the taskbar changing slightly. So that's better from an example point of view. Good point. Thanks for that suggestion. I'd like to do the same thing for the clock. Let's do the exact same change for the clock because Windows also has that effect on the clock. Now we want it to be alphabetically active is here, but we want it to be here because you could be hovered over it, but then hovered and active, you want this color versus the other way around. Basically, if it's active, it's already hovered because that means your mouse is on it anyways. Active clock colors. And all of these changes are just getting closer to Windows 10. So anytime I do a change and you're like, why wasn't it good the way it was before? Because it wasn't like Windows 10. That's why. More changes, upgrades, and ignore nested template literals. Right. I think when we do an npm package update, the Sonar.js starts to complain about my nested template literals, but that's how styled components kind of work. So it's dead wrong in this case, and I'm going to ignore that. Let's do our package updates anyways, because we never did them yet. Package updates. So how do I do my package updates typically? I start with a yarn outdated to see what's outdated. What do I need? So it looks like a lot of types, some Babel stuff, and the Sonar.js changes that we were talking about. We do yarn upgrade -- latest, which is going to upgrade our package.json file as well. And I think it's also faster than npm update too, by the way. I switched away from npm a while ago. Package update should be done. There's our package file. So you see a lot's changed here. Now I'm just going to commit this as is, even though I think we might have broken the ESLint. Actually, maybe we won't be able to commit it as is. Let's test. Probably we will. Let's test. Package updates. Commit that. Okay, so that commits fine. That's okay. But I think we broke some stuff. Now let's do a yarn ESLint and let's see if we broke the linting for Sonar. Or maybe they already unfixed, maybe they unbroke that already. Nope. So it's complaining about nested template literals, but as I said, that's kind of how some of the styled components that have props work. So it's just wrong. I'm not gonna follow its rules there. I'm gonna go into ESLint and I'm gonna ignore that rule as well. No nested template literals, I disagree. Ignore sonar.js nested template literal rule. There we go, and now there's no ESLint errors, so we're following every other rule and we're ignoring the rules that don't make sense. This rule doesn't make sense. Not if you're gonna have styled components, as far as I'm considering it. Maybe there's some rule you can add to this, but I mean, if I want to do a nested template literal, let me do it anyways. So all the animations I did right at the end. Let's actually, before we, is this animation, which are all three of these animations that I did? That one is, and this one is just rewording some stuff. Maybe we'll do these two first. Or maybe I'll do this one last, because this one I use in a few places, so we'll do that one last. This one is just a nice little one that I thought was cool. There's a CSS setting called inset. I guess it's existed for a while. I saw someone mention it recently. I was thinking of using it and then I didn't, and then someone mentioned it, I decided to use it. So it's got good browser support except for IE, which we don't support. And basically it's just a shorthand for top right, bottom left. And in a few places we use that. So I was thinking, let's just get rid of it and use inset. Here we have top, right, left, and bottom are all 0. In that case, we can just say inset is 0. A little shorthand that expresses the same idea. Same with desktop. Bottom, left, right, top is now inset. I think that was the only two cases. This is top, right, and yeah, this is just top and right. I couldn't find any other cases where all those were being set. So it was just those two where we could really use inset properly. Use inset when possible. The less code, the better, is always my motto. Add that to my show notes. That was this one. That means that all we have left is these three changes here. And they are all animations, and they're kind of cool, I guess. The first one is going to be involving the taskbar entry. Basically, if you see here, when we open a new window, it just appears, this entry right here. I open another one, pop, just appears. What it should do is it should and when it opens and closes. That's how it is in Windows, and that's what we want to copy. Let's figure out how to do that. The first thing we want to do is we want to add this animate presence in the process piece here. This is something you have to do with framer motion. If you want to be able to animate out the exiting of an element, the element being removed from the DOM, you have to essentially capture it by wrapping the elements around it that you care about. And I think in one of the commits I may have done it wrong, but I think in one commit I did it wrong, and we're gonna have to get back to it in a later time, I think. But this commit I did it right. So let's look at this first. This is in the taskbar entries. So when the taskbar entry items are kind of put in, oops, that's the styled taskbar entries. I want the real thing, which is here. Basically just takes processes and dumps the taskbar entry in here. And what we want to do is just wrap it in this animate presence piece, which is part of framer motion. Although this is not auto-detecting that for some odd reason. There we go. That won't hurt anything. Still works just fine like before. That's because we have to move on to the next step, which is changing the element to be a motion element. So in the taskbar entry, in the style taskbar entry is the element itself, which is a li element. And all we have to do is change it to be like this. Say it's a motion li element. And we import motion from framer motion. And that's all there is to that piece. So now it's a motion element. Now it'll support all the framer motion magic. Now the next piece I want to do is make a hook that's going to have all the styling in it for the taskbar entry. We're going to call that hook use taskbar transition. And we're just going to put that right on this element here at the end. A little hook here. And the reason we're using hooks in these cases is because we're going to have to dynamically get certain things from the theme, which is also needs hooks. That's all we need to change for that. And then as far as the logic of what motion, framer motion settings will occur, that all happens in the hook here. And the hook we'll just put right here within the taskbar entry. And I'll just copy it in. And we'll look through it because it's actually pretty simple. It's a simple one. This is all it is. And that's literally all the code. So it returns here, this is a motion props from Framer Motion. It grabs the taskbar height, or sorry, the taskbar entry's max width from the theme. That's the part where the hook is required. And it says, so when it animates, we want to use this active variant, which means that the width, so the animate is when it's at its full. So animate to full. Animate to full width of a taskbar entry. And the taskbar entry already has a, it has a width setting. This is the max width. So if it can't go to 150, 60 pixels, whatever it happens to be, it will properly, the element won't be allowed to go that big. And it'll only animate to the tiny bit that it needs to. And the initial and the exit states are for it to be 0 width. And then for the duration, we're going to sync it up with the exact same duration that the window uses because that's the same. And let's try it out. So now when I open a taskbar entry, we should see down here that it'll animate. There we go. You see it slid in, and then when we close it, it whoop, slides out. Slide in, and we can open a bunch of them, slide in, slide in. Now you see one bug that we haven't fixed yet. Watch, you'll see the clock here. The taskbar will actually go a little bit into the clock. Watch, if we open another one here. I think you don't notice it as much until you close something. Let's try with this. Yeah, you see the icon kind of went into the clock a little bit. That's the one last little change we have to do, which is in the styled taskbar entries, we just have to have no overflow. So say overflow hidden. So now when we have this and we close it, there we go. It doesn't overflow out into the outside the taskbar. It's kind of a mix between the other entries pushing it out and it itself shrinking, where it kind of it allows itself to get outside where there's more width than there is a container for it. But you can see here that they're all resizing to their proper width and they're animating. And when you close them, they now animate much nicer. And that's how Windows looks. So that's cool. And that's the power of Framer Motion, is it allows you to do these exit animations very simply just by wrapping your component. I don't know why it's saying that doesn't exist. It's wrong. If I open it again, now it's fine. And the real piece was just this here, but it was just very similar to the existing one that we used for the use window transitions. We already have an object that was similar to that, where it has an animate, an exit, an initial, and these variants. In this case, the variants were set up here because they're a little more complex, and sometimes they're dynamic here. But in the case of the taskbar, it's not too dynamic, but a little bit. It is linked to the theme, which is nice. That's that for that one. Taskbar animations, taskbar entry animation. Or let's say transitions. Transitions. Yep. That's the first one down. And it passed all of its tests. The next animation I had was the start menu. And this is a cool one. Actually, this is the only other animation I had. And then I tweaked the constant, I think, a little bit, and then that's it. So for the styled, right, this is for the start menu. This is a cool one. This I did a few interesting things. So here I did part of that. We won't do that like that probably. Or maybe we will. We'll see. Maybe we'll do that first. Let's refactor this piece here for the constants, just to have, because I need another transition constant. And I've decided to just, I have this one. I have this one here. Basically timeouts, millisecond timeouts. I want to combine them. So I'm going to combine it into these two here. We'll get rid of the start menu one for now, because that's the next piece. So we have the window transition is 250. Yep. And the double click transition is 500. and we're going to fix that wherever it's being used. So we're going to search for the underscore in milliseconds. Here we were using it. We'll change to be transition in milliseconds. Wait, was that what it was called? Transitions in milliseconds. Dot window. There's only a few places we need to change it. Same here. Dot window. And looks like this is another one. Dot window. I think that was the main three. It also helps us one line a few things, and then we just have to do the double click one. That was another one that we didn't get. Here it is. Oh, transitions, transition dot double click. There we go. So I've turned that into one constant because I just want the transition, millisecond transition times to be in one place. Transitions in milliseconds. Let's review our changes to make sure I actually changed all the correct things. Don't think I missed any. Just a rename for the most part and combining things. Let's search for this and make sure that's nowhere. Yeah, that's gone. And this one too. Ooh, I missed one. There we go. Now I've got them all, like Pokemon. So that was one piece of the puzzle. I'm going to call that updated transition constants, because that's what I ended up calling that commit before. Nice. And now we can move on to the final change, which is having start menu animation. So if we see here, when I click the start menu, just open, close, just disappears. But if you look at the Windows one, I looked at it for a long time. I recorded videos of it and stepped by it frame by frame. It has this easing transition where it opens up quite big, and then just at the end, there's a little bit of an ease. That's what we're going to emulate today. Now, I don't think I have it emulating that properly for the exit, which was part of the animate thing. But at the same time on Windows, the start menu actually doesn't do that same easing out. It does just disappear. So I think we might be okay there. And I also think that in this commit, I might not have to do the animate the exit part. Let's take a look at that. So parts of these we are going to need. Here's where I changed it to a motion element. I think that we need, but we don't need the part where I wrapped it here. Where is it here? Here. I think I did this wrong because this is the motion prop, but I think this animate presence acts like a provider. So this would need to be a component, and then that component would have the motion prop, I think. But that is the case. Interesting. Let's try to skip this step anyways, because I don't need to wrap it in animate presence if I don't want to animate its exit, which I don't actually care about for the Windows Start menu. Let's try to ignore this piece. But there are some things we need to specify, I guess. Why do I need to specify that? Yeah, here's where I did that piece. We don't need to do that now. We've added, let's add the start menu one first. So the delay, the time it takes for the start menu to open, I've measured it. It's about 400 milliseconds. Let's do that one. Let's start somewhere, right? Because this is a bigger change. We're going to have a 400 millisecond timeout once we have the thing. Now the next piece is adding the motion to it. So let's go to the styled start menu and do the same thing where we turn it from a nav prop, a nav element, to a motion nav element, and we import motion. Oops, come on. I see one other change here I did is height to make it a theme-based item. I think that's because I need to calculate, I think I need to do it in two places here. So that's what I'm gonna make it part of the theme now. So height here was set to 350. We're just gonna say height comes from the start menu settings. And we're gonna set it in there. Let's go to the sizes part of the theme. what's it complaining about here? I don't care about all that. I'm going to ignore that. We'll just put the start menu here alphabetically after start button, and we'll say it's height 350. That matches this here. And I also wanted to use the same height for the sidebar, because what was happening is, if you look at the sidebar here, this piece here, the way that Flex works for it is these are put to the top and these are put to the bottom of its container. But the issue with that was that as the thing is opening, these items work fine and they're at the top, but the bottom starts right at the bottom. So it was like the two icons, all the icons were visible, and then they were like stretching out like that. What I want is I want the icons to be here and they'd come into view kind of. But I'll show you that happening before we change it actually. Let's leave that for a moment. And let's move on to same with how I did the taskbar one. We're going to add this use start menu transitions hook to the start menu item. There we go. And now we have to make the hook called use start menu transition. So all that I did with this change here was just adding that to the motion element, that it's going to have some of those motion props that we're going to make dynamically via a hook. And then we're going to take a look at the hook, just like the taskbar one. So it's this pretty simple one, returns motion props. Here they are here. It's using that start menu height to know the height that we want to get to. And we start at the 0 with height. So this is very much like how the taskbar entry where it was width. This is height based. Now, one thing I was proud of was this here. This is the easing transition that you can set. And I had to look through Framer Motion's docs a bit to find this, but you can actually set a custom easing shape. And I personally didn't know about these, but I started looking at this like ease tool. There's an ease tool here. Let me see if I can find it. Caesar, was that it? Yeah, this was it here. And I started looking through these to see which ones there were. And I think the one I settled on was ease out expo. And if you see it here on height, so you see it's like that, where it's like a lot of height and then a little at the end, and then a little slow at the end. And it's based on this curve right here. And I can actually see a few other ones here, these cubic Beziers, where it talks about the different curves. And if you look here and you pick one, where is it here? Out expo. It actually makes the code here where it says there's a cubic Bezier or whatever, and these are the numbers for it. And it's these 4 numbers. And I found out in Framer Motion that those 4 numbers can be set here as an array. And I've tweaked the numbers a little bit to get the easing the way I liked it, but that's a way to do custom easing, because otherwise you can do like this. You can have like out's a generic one. Here they are right here, in fact. Looks like there's only a few of them, ease out. But I figured out you can do this custom one, which I don't even know if they mention. Oh, they do mention that. So it's a pretty cool little thing you can do. So we've added that. What other pieces do we have to add? So I didn't wrap it in animate presence, and I haven't fixed the height of the sidebar yet. Let's see how it looks. So I'm going to try it right now. I'm going to open it. Looks like nothing. I think maybe animate presence is important. Did I save everything? Okay, so animate presence is necessary. I don't know why exit wasn't working, but let's wrap it in animate presence and see if that makes a difference then. We need to find start menu visible. Here it is here. So this is when the component start menu either is part of the DOM or it's not, is based on this Boolean's existence. And what we're going to do is just change it to this, where we just wrap start menu in this animate presence, just like we did with the taskbar entries. Let's see if that allows Framer Motion to actually properly do motion. Odd. Something's missing. Something's not working as expected here. Let's try to figure it out. What if we do a yarn build? I'm not seeing any animation, so I might have been wrong about the animate motion thing. We might not need that, but we do need to figure out why this doesn't work. What happened? I thought I captured every piece of this. So it's interesting to try to figure out what I missed. Let's look through it. We got the hook that gets applied to the start menu, style start menu. And the style start menu is now a motion element. It gets its height from the theme. The transition here, transition in milliseconds for the start menu divided by the milliseconds. That should be correct. The easing function should be correct. I'm not sure I need this yet, but we're going to keep it for a second. I don't know what it's complaining about here. Oh, it's complaining about my CRs now? Delete CRs? Really? For prettier? It's just wrong. It's just prettier being wrong. It didn't change anything. Okay, so what's happening here? Let's try to open it up in this window here and see if I'm just not noticing the animation. Oh, what happened? Let's close the dev environment. Oh, that could be it. What was the last commit? What was the last thing I did before I did this? I did the package updates. I think it was these package updates. They probably broke my dev environment, and then none of these. Oh, wait a minute though. The taskbar entry I worked with. I don't know. Let's just try this again because I'm surprised that it didn't work. Let's get the dev environment back up. Got like another couple messages here. Stefan was saying that's quite neat, possibly the animation thing. Soder is suggesting you can check on DevTools animation tab to ensure that it's not really getting attached. Well, I'm not sure how that works with frame or motion, but let's just try this anyways. Why am I not getting, I feel like it's not animating. Let's change the timeout to be something way more ridiculous here. What about instead of 400, what if it's 4,000? No. So it's just not working. What have I missed here? Start menu. Let's start console logging stuff. It's funny, this is the last commit and this is the one time where it's not working in any sensible way. Oops. Let me close my brackets here. So let's debug this together. Yes, neat comment was regarding the easy thing. Yeah, cool. So when I open the start menu, there's the function there. That's okay, but I wanted to run the function to see what the result was. Let's open it again. Duration 4. I don't think that number is correct. Didn't I change the constant to be something massive? It's 4th. Let me try again. Now it's 0.4. That's correct. The ease is correct. The variance, I think that should be okay. I guess there's a chance that could be a number. What am I missing? Doesn't seem to have been that. So let's say that's applying fine to the object, which we've established has the motion props now. This might be one of those mysteries for another episode, because I actually have no darn idea what's going on. Let's take a look at the changes one more time, but it's unfortunate because I had a really nice transition that I wanted to show you guys. It was really easing well. Maybe we can try to apply some other types of transitions just to try to get it working. Let's try to go into the piece of the transition here. Use start menu transitions. Let's change this to ease out in case this is, well, I know this isn't wrong. Literally all this stuff worked before, but whoa. How come I keep getting more every time I type in this thing? Okay, none of them are the one I want though, because they don't have expo here. Anticipate sounds cool. Let's switch this to ease out and see if that makes a difference. When does anything make a difference with this? What's going on? Yeah, I can't really fathom why this part's not working, because the taskbar entry animation part worked very well. But this is just not working as expected. That part's fine. This part's fine. I question whether that's fine, but it shouldn't make a difference. Darn it. Why isn't that working? height here. What if I set 350 instead? Like a number. That didn't make a difference. Nor would I have expected it to. Darn it, guys. This might be the one mystery, and then watch next episode. It'll be like a one-liner, like a one character to change, probably. I'm going to undo this. I feel like, let's double check what animate presence does. I think it's purely for exit, though. It's required to enable exit transitions. Animate out. Okay. So we've established that for the start menu, we don't need to animate out. So that shouldn't matter. These, I don't think should matter either. I don't care about that. That was just because I did a build. So this is the styled start menu. Is that not what I applied it to? Let's make sure. We got the transition part here. It is the styled start menu. On blur, tab index, ref, and then the... Oh, I found it. Yeah, it was on me. So you see here, I was just dumping it here without running it as a hook. Ugh. It's funny that it just totally accepted that. But okay, let's see. Now we should get something. There we go. So that's a cool little... That's not bad. It feels slower than I remember it, though. Did I change the number again? Is that how slow it is in Windows? Now it feels too slow. I'm off now. Going to do a triathlon. Good luck. Cool. Sounds fun. See you, Stefan. I think I know why it feels slow. I think it's this. Ah, yes, because I switched it back to ease out, and it's not looking the way I wanted it to. So now we don't need ease out anymore. Let's go back to using the one I was talking about, and now try it. There we go. So that is doing it. Pop, and then a little bit at the end. That's how the start menu is. So you see the bottom icons here are looking a bit weird. They come in too fast. That was where I wanted to generalize the theme here for height. I need to say that the sidebar already has a preset height, which goes here. There we go. Now when I open this, now the icons are already all the way down, so you see them come up. That's a better transition. And in the future, I'm going to transition these as well. Those icons need to be 64 pixels down, and they come up as this is coming up, as like a double transition. But I don't have that piece yet. For now, I just have the start menu. And yeah, it was a subtle little mistake I made there. Just needed those little brackets there. So it was 2 characters I had wrong, and all the code didn't work, even though every other piece looked fine. So we fixed it now. And now we have start menu transitions, we have taskbar transitions, all sorts of new animations. You guys might notice that the icons are a little slow. That has to do with the dev environment. There's going to be an episode where I work on optimizing them, because they're all quite small. I'm thinking of even preloading all icons, because all icons total, the 16 by 16 pixel ones, is it's like 10 kilobytes for all of them. Make a note here, added start menu transition. That's that. I think we're done. I'm just gonna, well, is there anything, there isn't even anything else to run. It just works. It's just working. We did inset already. We did the changing of the constants. Nothing's crashing. Let's just do one more double check of the code here. Look at all we did today. So many things. What are we at? 2 hours, 59 minutes? Yeah, I think this is a good time to call it a night, just like everyone else is. I have a triathlon of my own of sleep to do. So I think we're at the end. Thank you guys for another episode, for staying as long as you did. If you had a good time, please throw me a like. If you like what I'm doing, you want to follow me, you want to motivate me, please subscribe. It helps. Feel free to leave some comments on the video if you have any ideas, comments, questions, concerns, criticisms, anything like that. Otherwise, have a good one, and thanks, and see you guys.